Mirrors. Mirrors are part of daily life. We use them while getting ready, checking our clothes, or making sure nothing is stuck to our face. But behind that simple reflection is a surprisingly precise piece of design. A mirror works by reflecting light in an unusually controlled way. Most surfaces scatter light, which is why they look rough or matte. A mirror, however, is polished to an extremely smooth finish, allowing light rays to bounce off in a consistent direction. This even reflection preserves the pattern of the incoming light, forming a crisp image of whatever stands in front of it. Modern mirrors are created by coating a sheet of glass with a thin metallic layer, usually aluminum or silver. The glass provides strength and protection, while the metal is what actually reflects the light. When light from your face reaches the surface, it hits the metal layer and returns to your eyes in the same arrangement it arrived. Because the reflection reverses direction, the image appears flipped left to right. Although mirrors feel ordinary, they're incredibly sensitive to imperfections. A small scratch or uneven patch can distort the reflection, stretching or warping the image. Beyond everyday grooming, mirrors play a key role in technology. They concentrate light inside telescopes, guide beams inside laser systems, and form part of the sensors used in satellites and cameras. A mirror may seem simple, but it's a carefully engineered surface that transforms scattered light into a clear and usable image. Velcro. You've probably used Velcro today without thinking about it. On a shoe, a bag, or a cable strap that keeps your wires from tangling. It's one of those everyday mechanisms that feels simple, but the way it works is surprisingly clever. Velcro is made of two strips that attach when they're pressed together and separate when pulled apart. The first strip is covered in tiny hooks. The second strip is lined with tiny loops. When you press them together, the hooks grab onto the loops and create a temporary bond. It's not glued, locked, or magnetized. It's just thousands of tiny mechanical connections forming at once. This design was inspired by something very familiar. In nature, burrs cling to clothes and animal fur using the same hook and loop idea. When engineers recreated this in fabric, they created a fastener that's strong enough to hold but easy to undo whenever needed. The strength of Velcro depends on how many hooks catch onto the loops. On a small patch, there are hundreds. On bigger surfaces, there can be thousands. That's why Velcro can secure anything from kids' shoes to industrial equipment. And because the connection is mechanical, not chemical, it works again and again without wearing out quickly. We also see Velcro in places where quick and reliable fastening is important. Astronauts use it to keep tools from floating away. Medical devices use it for adjustable straps. Even everyday items like jackets, watch bands, and cable organizers rely on the simple hook and loop system. What makes Velcro so useful is how it provides grip, flexibility, and convenience all at once. It turns a tiny physical interaction into a practical tool that fits naturally into daily life. Ballpoint pen. A ballpoint pen feels simple on the outside, but inside it is a compact mechanism designed to deliver ink in a smooth, controlled line. At the very tip is a tiny metal ball, usually made of brass or steel, held in a small socket that lets it rotate freely. When the pen touches paper, the ball starts to roll. As it turns, it picks up ink from the reservoir behind it and lays that ink onto the page in a steady, even streak. The same rolling ball also acts as a seal, preventing the ink from leaking out. The ink inside a ballpoint pen is thick and oil-based. This thickness keeps it from flowing too fast or smudging easily. Because of this, the rolling ball has to physically drag the ink forward, with each rotation pulling a fresh layer onto the writing surface. The design also helps preserve the ink. When the pen isn't in use, the ball blocks air from reaching the reservoir, slowing down drying. Some pens add retractable tips, springs, or caps to protect the writing point even further. You can see how efficient this mechanism is in everyday situations. Whether you're filling out a form or writing a quick reminder, A ballpoint pen works quietly and reliably without pumps, valves, or complicated parts. Just a rotating ball and a stable ink supply. This simple engineering system is what makes the ballpoint pen one of the most dependable and widely used writing tools in modern life. Escalators. Escalators move thousands of people every day, and their steady motion comes from a tightly coordinated mechanical system working beneath the steps. At its core, an escalator is a continuous chain of steps connected to two long loops of metal links. As an electric motor turns these loops, the steps travel along a guided path. What makes the ride feel stable is the shape of the rails underneath. These rails control each step, so it stays flat through the middle of the escalator, then folds neatly into a compact shape at the top and bottom of the loop. The handrail follows a similar path using its own belt and pulley system. It's synchronized to match the speed of the steps, allowing your hand to move with your body without slipping or dragging. All of this motion is driven by a motor housed at the base or top of the escalator. It works alongside sensors, brakes, and safety switches that monitor the system. If a step jams, an object gets caught, or a rider triggers the emergency stop, the escalator can halt almost instantly. These components work together to create a system that runs quietly in the background, carrying people through busy spaces without needing their attention. It's built for continuous movement, helping large crowds flow smoothly throughout the day. Barcode. A barcode is a compact visual code made of black bars and white spaces, arranged in patterns that translate into numerical information. Each pattern corresponds to a specific number sequence, which acts as a link to data stored in a computer system. The barcode itself doesn't hold product details. It simply points the system to where those details are recorded. When an item is scanned, a beam of light passes across the lines. The black bars absorb the light, while the white spaces reflect it. A sensor measures these reflections and converts them into a digital signal. That signal becomes the product's identifying number, allowing the system to retrieve information like the item's price and description instantly. The design is built for accuracy. Scanners can read barcodes even when they're slightly smudged, scratched, or wrapped around curved surfaces. This reliability is why checkout counters, warehouses, and delivery services can process large volumes of items quickly and with minimal error. Barcodes appear on everyday products, medical labels, clothing, and shipping packages. They make inventory updates automatic, help warehouses locate items efficiently, and reduce mistakes that occur when information is entered manually in a small space. A barcode provides a fast and dependable way to connect physical objects to the digital systems that organize and track them. LED lights. An LED, or light-emitting diode, is a small device that produces light when electricity moves through a semiconductor material. Unlike older bulbs that heat metal filaments or excite gas, an LED generates light directly from the movement of electrons. Because very little energy is wasted as heat, LEDs stay cool and operate far more efficiently. Their efficiency also allows LEDs to be compact while still producing strong light. That's why they appear in phone indicators, TV backlights, car headlights, street lights, and home lighting. One basic component can scale from a tiny status light to a powerful beam used in vehicles and outdoor fixtures. Color in LEDs comes from the semiconductor itself. Different materials emit different wavelengths, which means some LEDs naturally shine red, blue, or green. To create white light, manufacturers may combine LEDs of various colors or use a phosphor coating that converts the light into a broad spectrum that appears white to the eye. LEDs are also known for their longevity. With no filament to burn out and minimal heat buildup, they can operate for tens of thousands of hours before dimming. This durability makes them useful in devices and environments that require continuous or long-term lighting. Through efficient energy use, precise color control, and long lifespan, LEDs provide a dependable and adaptable lighting solution for everything from small electronics to large-scale illumination. Engines. An engine is a machine that turns fuel into motion. Most engines used in daily life are internal combustion engines, where the burning of fuel happens inside the engine's cylinders. Each cycle begins when a mixture of air and fuel enters a cylinder and is compressed by a piston. When ignited, the mixture rapidly expands and forces the piston downward, creating a burst of power. This process repeats thousands of times per minute. The pistons connect to a crankshaft, which converts their straight-line movement into rotation. That rotation drives the wheels of a vehicle or powers whatever machine the engine is attached to. To keep this cycle efficient, engines rely on precise control. Sensors regulate the air-fuel ratio. Spark plugs fire at exact moments. Exhaust systems clear out gases left after combustion. Even though the space inside the cylinder is small, every part of the timing must work perfectly for the engine to run smoothly. Different engines handle fuel differently. Petrol and diesel engines share the same basic idea but vary in how they ignite the mixture. Diesel engines compress air more tightly, generating enough heat to ignite fuel without a spark. This approach gives them greater strength and efficiency, especially for heavy vehicles and machinery. At a functional level, an engine is a series of rapid, controlled combustions, turning chemical energy into mechanical motion. Through precise timing and carefully balanced components, it transforms fuel into the steady rotation that powers everyday machines. Noise cancellation. When you put on noise-cancelling headphones during a busy commute, it can feel like the world suddenly goes quiet, even though nothing around you has actually changed. Noise cancellation works by understanding one simple fact about sound. Every sound you hear is a wave, a pattern of pressure moving through the air. If you could see the wave from a passing bus or a loud conversation, it would rise and fall in a predictable shape. And if you create another wave with the exact opposite shape, the two waves cancel each other out. This idea is called destructive interference. Noise-cancelling headphones use this principle in a very controlled way. Tiny microphones on the outside of the headphones constantly listen to the sounds around you. They pick up the hum of engines, the rumble of a train, or the drone of an air conditioner. The headphones then generate a matching anti-sound, a wave that mirrors the incoming noise but is inverted. When the two meet, they cancel, leaving much less noise reaching your ears. This process happens incredibly fast. The headphones are analyzing sound and producing the opposite signal thousands of times per second. They're especially good at reducing consistent, low-frequency sounds like airplane engines or steady traffic. Sudden noises, like someone clapping or dropping something, are harder to cancel because they change too quickly for the system to react. Most noise-cancelling headphones combine this active cancellation with passive noise isolation. That means the physical design of the ear cups also blocks sound by creating a seal around your ears. The two methods work together to give you that familiar quiet bubble. Even though it feels almost magical, noise cancellation is simply precise timing and clever physics shaping the sound before it ever reaches your ears. Touchscreens. Every time you swipe through a photo, type a message, or tap an app, you're using a touchscreen without thinking about the invisible technology working underneath your fingertips. Most modern touchscreens use something called capacitive sensing. Instead of relying on pressure, the screen is coated with a thin, transparent layer that conducts electricity. Your finger, which naturally carries a tiny electrical charge, interacts with this layer the moment it touches the glass. That touch disrupts the screen's electrical field in a very specific way. Under the surface, the screen is divided into a grid of tiny electrodes. When your finger makes contact, sensors detect exactly where the electrical field has changed. The device instantly translates that point into a command, whether it's opening an app, scrolling a page, or zooming into a picture. This entire process happens in milliseconds, giving the illusion of a direct connection between your thoughts and the screen. Because capacitive screens respond to electrical charge instead of physical pressure, they're smooth, responsive, and durable. You don't need to press hard like older touchscreen styles. A gentle tap is enough. That's also why most touchscreens don't work well with gloves unless they're designed to conduct a small amount of electricity. Multi-touch gestures, like pinching to zoom or rotating an image, come from the screen detecting multiple points of contact at the same time. The system reads each touch, calculates their positions, and interprets the movement as a single action. Touchscreens combine materials, sensors, and lightning-fast processing to create an experience that feels simple and intuitive. Even though they look like ordinary glass, they're constantly measuring, calculating, and responding, turning tiny electrical disturbances from your fingertips into the smooth interactions you use every day. Motion sensors. Motion sensors detect small changes in movement or the environment and convert them into signals a device can understand. One of the most common types is the accelerometer, which measures shifts in speed and direction. Inside your phone, microscopic components move slightly when the device tilts or shakes, producing electrical changes that reveal its orientation and motion. Another important sensor is the gyroscope. While an accelerometer tracks linear movement, a gyroscope measures rotation. This helps a phone keep its screen aligned, enables drones to stay level in the air, and supports camera systems that stabilize video by correcting tiny hand movements. In places like hallways or building entrances, infrared motion detectors are widely used. These sensors monitor changes in heat rather than motion itself. Human bodies emit infrared radiation, and a sudden change in that pattern signals the presence of someone entering the area, triggering lights or alarms. Many devices use a combination of sensors to improve accuracy. Fitness trackers merge accelerometer and gyroscope data to estimate steps, activity levels, and sleep patterns. VR headsets and game controllers rely on this combination to map real-world movement into digital space with precision. Motion sensors apply physics, microengineering, and rapid signal processing to interpret movement and environmental changes, allowing everyday devices to respond instantly and accurately. Camera. A camera works by capturing and controlling light. When you press the shutter, light from the scene enters through the lens, which bends and focuses it to create a sharp image. The lens adjusts its position or internal elements to keep subjects clear whether they're close or far away. After passing through the lens, the light reaches the image sensor. This sensor acts as the digital equivalent of film and is covered with millions of tiny pixels. Each pixel measures the intensity of incoming light, with specific pixels tuned to red, green, or blue wavelengths. By combining these readings, the camera reconstructs the colors and brightness of the scene. The sensor turns this information into electrical signals, which are processed immediately by an internal processor. This processor reduces noise, corrects exposure, enhances sharpness, and balances color. Modern systems even recognize patterns like edges and faces to improve clarity before the final image appears on the screen. Smartphone cameras add another layer of processing by capturing multiple frames at once and merging them. This improves detail, reduces blur, and helps the camera handle difficult lighting. The entire process, focusing, sensing, analyzing, and computing, happens in milliseconds. Cameras rely on precision optics, sensitive sensors, and rapid processing to turn patterns of light into clear, detailed images. Vacuum cleaner. A vacuum cleaner works by manipulating air pressure rather than pulling debris in through force. Inside the machine, a fast-spinning fan pushes air outward, creating a low-pressure area behind it. Since air naturally moves from high pressure to low pressure, the surrounding air rushes toward this lower pressure zone, carrying dust and dirt along its path. The incoming air flows through the nozzle and into the vacuum's interior, where filtration begins. Larger particles are caught early in the dust bag or primary filter, while finer particles continue into additional layers of filtration. Many modern designs use a cyclonic chamber, forcing air into a tight spiral. The spinning motion pushes heavier debris outward, separating it from the air before it reaches the filter. This is why dust collects visibly in clear canisters on bagless models. Once filtered, clean air is expelled through the back of the machine, allowing the fan to maintain the low-pressure region that keeps airflow moving. As long as the motor runs, this cycle of pressure and movement continues, lifting dirt from floors, carpets, and upholstery. Attachments modify how the airflow interacts with different surfaces. A narrow crevice tool accelerates the air to reach into tight gaps. A wider floor head spreads the airflow across larger areas. Brush tools loosen stubborn debris so the moving air can carry it away more easily. The system relies on steady airflow, controlled pressure differences, and layered filtration to gather debris effectively, turning a simple physical principle into a practical cleaning tool. Pressure cooker. The familiar hiss of steam from a cooker signals a process that relies on pressure, heat, and a bit of physics working together. A pressure cooker is essentially a sealed pot that traps steam. When water inside it heats up, the temperature rises until it reaches the boiling point. In an open pot, boiling stays around 100 degrees Celsius because the surrounding air pressure limits it. But once a pressure cooker locks its lid, steam can't escape freely. As it builds, the internal pressure increases. Higher pressure raises the boiling point of water, meaning the liquid and steam inside become much hotter than they could in an uncovered pot. This extra heat cooks food much faster. Tough lentils soften in minutes, fibrous vegetables break down evenly, and meat becomes tender because the higher temperature penetrates the food more efficiently. The steam also surrounds the ingredients from all sides, keeping moisture in and preventing drying. Safety mechanisms keep the process controlled. Pressure cookers use valves that release excess steam once a certain threshold is reached. That whistling sound is simply the valve preventing the pressure from climbing too high. Newer cookers often use spring-loaded systems instead of weights, but the purpose is the same: maintain a stable internal pressure during cooking. Once the heat is turned off, the pressure gradually drops. It can fall naturally over time or be released quickly depending on the recipe. Only when it returns to normal can the lid be safely opened. A pressure cooker speeds up cooking by using elevated pressure and higher temperatures to prepare food quickly, evenly, and efficiently. Induction stove. The fast, focused heat from an induction stove comes from a process that warms the pan directly rather than the cooking surface beneath it. Unlike gas flames or electric coils, an induction stove uses magnetism to create heat inside the cookware itself. Just beneath the glass top is a tightly wound copper coil. When the stove is activated, electricity flows through this coil and produces a rapidly changing magnetic field. This field passes through the glass and into any compatible pot or pan, usually one made of iron or certain stainless steels. Inside that metal, the magnetic field causes tiny charged particles to move rapidly. Their movement generates heat, but only inside the cookware. The stove's surface stays relatively cool, warming only where the pan touches it. This is why induction can boil water quickly and why the glass cools down soon after the cookware is removed. Because the heat forms within the pan, very little energy is wasted. Temperature adjustments feel immediate, since there's no lingering heat from a burner or flame. Turn the setting down, and the change happens inside the metal almost at once. The design also adds a layer of safety. With no open flame or glowing coil, the risk of accidental burns is lower. The system only produces heat when compatible cookware is present. Lift the pan and the magnetic field continues, but without metal to react with, no heat is generated. Induction cooking relies on magnetic fields to create heat directly inside the cookware, making the entire process fast, efficient, and highly responsive. Power bank. Portable chargers have become a quiet essential in modern life, giving our devices extra hours of use without needing a wall outlet. Behind that convenience is a compact energy storage system designed to release power safely and steadily. Inside a power bank is a rechargeable lithium-ion or lithium polymer battery. These batteries store energy through chemical reactions that place charged particles in a high-energy state when the power bank is plugged into a charger. Once fully charged, the stored energy remains ready until you connect a device. When you plug in your phone, the power bank begins converting its stored energy into a stable, regulated output. A built-in circuit manages this process. It controls voltage, ensures the current stays within safe limits, and prevents sudden spikes or drops that could harm the device being charged. This circuitry is why a power bank can safely power everything from earbuds to tablets. Most power banks also include protection systems that guard against overheating, short circuits, and overcharging. These features keep both the power bank and the connected device safe while transferring energy. LED indicators or digital displays show the remaining charge, helping you know when the internal battery is running low. Higher capacity models contain larger or multiple battery cells, allowing them to charge devices several times before needing to be replenished. Fast-charging versions use more advanced circuitry to deliver higher power output without damaging connected electronics. What seems like a simple portable battery is really a carefully controlled system that stores energy, regulates it, and delivers it on demand. It acts as a temporary power reservoir, keeping your devices running when you're away from conventional outlets. Night vision goggles. Seeing clearly in low light requires far more light than the human eye can collect on its own, and night vision goggles bridge that gap by amplifying whatever faint light is still available. These goggles begin by gathering the small amount of natural or ambient light present at night, whether it comes from the moon, distant reflections, or scattered starlight. This light enters through a front lens and reaches a key component called the image intensifier. Inside the intensifier, the incoming photons strike a surface that converts them into electrons. Those electrons then pass through a section designed to multiply them many times over, creating a much stronger signal than what originally entered. This multiplication dramatically brightens the scene, turning near darkness into something the eye can interpret. The amplified electrons hit a phosphor screen, which glows where they land. That glowing image is what the user sees through the eyepiece. Green is the standard output because the human eye can detect more variation in green tones than any other color, making the final image easier to read. Some systems also rely on infrared illumination. Although infrared light is invisible to us, night vision sensors can capture it and convert it into a visible picture. This allows the goggles to function even when natural light is almost non-existent, using invisible light to reveal what would otherwise remain hidden. While models vary in detail and performance, the underlying process is consistent. Collect faint light, amplify it, and convert it into a clear, usable view of the surroundings. E-ink Kindle screen. Reading on a Kindle feels noticeably different from reading on a phone or laptop, and that familiar, paper-like quality comes from how its display is built. E-ink screens work using tiny capsules arranged across the entire surface of the display. Each capsule holds black and white particles that respond to electrical signals. The white particles carry a positive charge, and the black particles carry a negative charge. When the device sends a signal to a specific point, either the black or white particles move to the top of the capsule. White particles create a light spot, black particles create a dark one, and millions of these changes together form text and simple images. What makes this technology unique is that once the particles settle into place, they stay there without needing more power. The screen only uses energy when the page changes. That's why an e-reader can hold a battery charge for days or even weeks, even with frequent reading. Because e-ink reflects light rather than emitting it, the display resembles printed ink on paper. It's easy on the eyes, remains readable in bright sunlight, and feels natural for long reading sessions. The trade-off is that animations and rapid updates look slow or uneven, since the particles physically shift with each change. The combination of charged particles, microcapsules, and low-power physics creates a display that delivers the calm, steady look of ink on paper while still functioning like a digital screen. Air purifier. The difference an air purifier makes becomes clear once the device has been running for a while. The room feels lighter and the air takes on a cleaner, calmer quality. An air purifier works by pulling air into the machine, passing it through filters, and sending it back out with far fewer particles. At the center of the design is a simple idea. Remove what the lungs don't need. Air first moves through a pre-filter that stops the larger debris floating through a room, such as dust, hair, and lint. Behind it sits the main component, the HEPA filter. This filter is made from densely layered fibers arranged to force air through a winding path. As the airflow twists through that structure, tiny particles like pollen, smoke, pet dander, and some bacteria get trapped within the fibers. Many purifiers add an activated carbon layer to handle odors and gases. The carbon is filled with microscopic pores that hold onto molecules responsible for smells or certain chemicals, keeping them out of the recirculated air. As the purifier continues cycling the room's air, the concentration of unwanted particles gradually falls. The change isn't always visible, but over time it can be felt, especially by anyone sensitive to dust or allergens. The device doesn't alter the air itself, it simply filters out what accumulates. Keeping the purifier effective depends on cleaning or replacing the filters, since clogged fibers can no longer capture new particles. Through steady airflow and layered filtration, an air purifier refreshes the environment around you, creating cleaner and more comfortable air with each cycle. Printer. A sheet of paper passing through a printer looks like a simple process, but inside the machine, several mechanisms are working together with remarkable precision. A printer's job is to place controlled amounts of color or carbon onto paper to recreate text and images accurately. Two main technologies handle this in most homes and offices: inkjet printing and laser printing. Both achieve the same final result, but they rely on very different methods. Inkjet printers use microscopic nozzles to spray tiny droplets of liquid ink onto the page. Each droplet lands exactly where it needs to be, forming patterns that the eye blends into lines, colors, and photos. High-resolution images rely on thousands of these droplets being placed each second, building the picture from countless small dots. Laser printers take a more electrical approach. Inside the machine, a rotating drum is given an electrostatic charge. A laser then traces the desired pattern onto the drum by altering that charge in specific areas. Powdered toner sticks only to the portions touched by the laser. As the drum rolls over the paper, the toner transfers onto it, and a heating element fuses the particles permanently into the fibers, creating crisp, durable printouts. Throughout the process, sensors check alignment, rollers move the paper with exact timing, and heating components apply the right amount of energy. Even a slight error in any step can lead to streaks, smudges, or misaligned text. A printer turns digital information into a physical page through coordinated mechanical, electrical, and chemical processes, delivering clear output at a pace that feels effortless. Photocopier. The familiar hum of a copying machine hides a process built on precise coordination between light, static charge, and heat. A photocopier creates a duplicate using a method called xerography, which takes advantage of materials that hold an electrical charge in darkness, but lose it when exposed to light. The process begins with scanning. A bright lamp moves beneath the document, and sensors read how much light reflects from each part of the page. Printed text and images reflect less light, while blank areas reflect more, forming a detailed map of the original. Inside the machine, a rotating drum coated with a light-sensitive material is given an even electrical charge. The scanned image is projected onto the drum, and wherever light hits, the charge fades. The darker areas retain their charge. This creates an invisible electrostatic pattern that mirrors the layout of the page. Toner, a fine powder made from pigment and plastic, is then drawn to the charged portions of the drum. It adheres only where the text and images should appear. As the drum rotates, it presses this pattern onto a clean sheet of paper. The final stage involves heat. The paper passes through a pair of heated rollers, which melt the toner particles and fuse them permanently into the fibers of the page, ensuring the copy is sharp and resistant to smudging. A photocopier produces a clean duplicate by combining careful scanning, charge manipulation, and thermal bonding into one continuous, reliable sequence. The small glow beneath a smartwatch or fitness band hides a system that measures your heartbeat with surprising accuracy. Modern heart rate monitors work by detecting changes in blood flow just below the skin. Most use a technique called photoplethysmography, which relies on light rather than touch. A tiny LED shines into the surface of your wrist, and the light interacts with your blood vessels. Because blood absorbs green light more than the surrounding tissue, the amount of reflected light changes each time your heart pushes blood through the area. A sensor next to the LED measures these fluctuations. Every heartbeat creates a clear rise and fall in the reflected light, and the device turns this pattern into a continuous pulse reading. By identifying the peaks in the signal, the system calculates your heart rate in beats per minute. Placement matters. The wrist works well because the blood vessels are close to the surface, but some monitors use chest straps instead. These straps detect the heart's electrical signals directly, similar to a simplified ECG, making them more accurate during intense movement or athletic training. To keep the reading stable, the device filters out noise from motion, sweat, or loose contact with the skin. Algorithms smooth the data so the measurement stays consistent while you walk, exercise, or sleep. Behind a simple display of numbers is a combination of light, sensors, and real-time signal processing that tracks one of the body's most important rhythms with steady reliability. Drone. Lifting a drone into the air sets off a chain of coordinated movements inside the machine, all working together to keep it steady and responsive. Most consumer drones rely on 4 rotors arranged in a cross pattern. 2 spin clockwise and 2 spin counterclockwise. This opposing motion prevents the drone from uncontrollably twisting and creates the stable upward force needed for takeoff. When all 4 rotors generate equal thrust, the drone rises vertically in a controlled balance climb. Directional movement comes from shifting this balance. Increasing the speed of the rear motors tilts the drone forward, pushing it ahead. Speeding up motors on one side makes the drone slide sideways. To rotate, the system changes the speed of opposing rotors, allowing the body to turn while staying level. Every action the drone takes is simply a precise adjustment in how much each rotor pushes against the air. To keep these movements consistent, the drone depends on a network of sensors. Gyroscopes track rotation, accelerometers measure shifts in speed and tilt, and barometers monitor altitude. GPS adds location awareness, helping the drone hover in place or follow a path. All this information flows into an onboard processor that makes rapid corrections many times per second. Cameras are often mounted on gimbals, which counteract bumps and tilts, so the footage remains smooth even when the drone moves quickly or faces turbulence. A compact battery powers everything, and continuous monitoring ensures the drone returns before the charge runs low. What looks like effortless flight is actually a tight interplay of sensors, motor control, and constant micro-adjustments, keeping the drone stable as it moves through the air. Radio. Radio communication begins with a simple idea. Sound can be turned into a signal that travels through the air. To make this possible, a radio station first converts speech or music into an electrical pattern. That pattern is then combined with a much higher frequency electromagnetic wave called a carrier wave. By modulating the carrier, either changing its strength or its frequency, the audio information becomes something that can move across long distances at the speed of light. Once transmitted, these waves spread outward through the atmosphere. Some travel directly in straight lines, while others reflect off the ionosphere and return toward the ground, allowing signals to reach far beyond the original broadcast area. A radio receives this signal using its antenna, which picks up the changing electromagnetic fields moving through the air. Inside the device, circuitry separates the carrier wave from the audio information attached to it. After demodulation, What remains is the original electrical version of the sound. The radio then amplifies that signal and sends it to the speakers, turning it back into audible vibrations. Tuning simply means selecting which frequency the internal circuits should pay attention to. Each station occupies a narrow range in the spectrum, so adjusting the dial shifts the receiver until it locks onto the desired broadcast. FM typically provides cleaner sound, while AM can travel farther due to how the waves behave in the atmosphere. What happens inside a radio is a careful sequence of converting sound into waves, transmitting them, capturing them again, and rebuilding the original audio with accuracy. Laser. Light behaves very differently inside a laser than it does in everyday sources. Instead of spreading in all directions, the light in a laser is organized so that every wave moves in sync, forming a narrow beam that stays focused over long distances. This starts inside a component called the gain medium, which might be a gas, a crystal, or a semiconductor. When energy is supplied, the atoms in this material absorb it and move into an excited state. As they return to their normal state, they release photons, the elementary particles of light. Two mirrors sit on either side of the gain medium, creating a space where these photons bounce back and forth. Each photon can trigger excited atoms to release new photons that match it exactly in wavelength and direction. This repeating interaction creates a growing population of identical photons moving together in an organized stream. One of the mirrors is partially transparent, allowing a small amount of this synchronized light to escape. That emerging beam is the laser. Because all of the waves line up perfectly, the beam remains tight and powerful, which is why even small laser devices can project a pinpoint of light across a large distance. This controlled beam makes lasers useful in a wide range of everyday tools. They scan barcodes at stores, read data on disks, assist in precise measurements, and help devices like phones and cameras detect depth or focus accurately. Lasers work by amplifying and aligning light with extreme precision, producing a beam that's reliable, stable, and essential to many technologies we use daily. Biometric scanner. Modern devices authenticate you by reading patterns that are uniquely tied to your body. These scanners focus on physical traits that remain stable over time, turning them into a secure way to confirm identity. Fingerprint readers do this by examining the ridges and grooves on your finger. The sensor, whether optical or electrical, measures the tiny details and converts them into a mathematical template. Each time you unlock the device, a fresh scan is compared to that template to check for a close enough match. Facial recognition follows a similar principle, but gathers far more data points. A camera analyzes the spacing between your facial features, while additional sensors may project infrared dots or measure depth. This combination helps the system recognize your face accurately, even in varied lighting conditions. Like fingerprints, the stored result is not an image, but a numerical representation. Iris scanners look at the complex patterns in the colored ring around your pupil. These patterns are extremely detailed and remain consistent throughout life, which makes iris-based identification one of the most reliable biometric methods. Despite using different technologies, all biometric systems follow the same structure. Capture a physical pattern, translate it into a secure digital form, and compare future scans to verify identity. Induction charger pad. Placing a device on a charging pad sets off a quiet exchange of energy built around magnetic fields. The pad contains a coil of wire that produces a rapidly changing magnetic field whenever electricity flows through it. This fluctuating field extends just above the surface, ready for any compatible device. Your phone carries its own coil beneath the back panel. When the two coils align, the magnetic field from the pad induces an electric current in the phone's coil. The process relies on electromagnetic induction, energy moving between the coils without physical contact or exposed metal. Once the phone receives this induced current, its internal circuitry smooths and regulates the power, so the battery can store it safely. Temperature sensors and power controllers constantly adjust the flow to prevent overheating or overcharging. Distance plays a major role in how well induction charging works. Because magnetic fields weaken quickly, the device needs to stay close to the pad. Some pads use multiple coils to widen the charging zone, while others fine-tune power output based on how well the coils are aligned. By shifting power transfer from cables to magnetic fields, wireless charging offers a simpler way to keep devices powered while reducing wear on ports and connectors. Thermal camera. Viewing the world through temperature reveals patterns that ordinary light can't show. A thermal camera captures this hidden information by detecting infrared radiation, energy that every object emits according to how warm or cool it is. At the center of the device is a microbolometer, a sensor designed to absorb infrared radiation rather than visible light. Each pixel in the sensor warms slightly when it receives infrared energy. The camera measures those tiny temperature changes and assigns shades to them, creating an image where warmer areas appear brighter and cooler areas appear darker. This is why people stand out clearly against colder surroundings. Human skin constantly radiates heat, allowing the camera to outline a body even in total darkness or through smoke. That ability makes thermal imaging valuable for firefighters searching through smoky rooms, technicians checking insulation leaks, doctors identifying inflamed areas, and researchers observing wildlife without disturbing it. Because the system relies on temperature differences, thermal cameras don't need illumination. They can detect even subtle warmth transfers, like the faint imprint left on a surface after you move your hand. By converting infrared energy into visible contrast, thermal cameras provide a practical way to observe heat patterns that exist everywhere in daily life. Car suspension system. Every smooth drive you've ever had, from gliding over a speed bump to cruising down a highway, is made possible by the suspension system beneath your car. A car suspension is designed to manage two things at the same time: keeping the ride comfortable for you and keeping the tires firmly on the road. The moment a wheel hits a bump or dips into a pothole, the suspension absorbs the impact, so the body of the car doesn't shake violently with every surface change. The main components working behind the scenes are springs, shock absorbers, and control arms. Springs hold the weight of the vehicle and compress when the road pushes upward. Shock absorbers sit next to them and control the movement of those springs. Without shocks, the car would bounce uncontrollably after every bump because springs naturally want to keep oscillating. The control arms connect the wheels to the frame of the car, guiding how each wheel moves up and down. Together, these parts allow each wheel to react to the road independently, so one bump under one tire doesn't throw the entire car off balance. Modern suspensions often use a setup called independent suspension, where each wheel has its own connection to the car instead of being tied directly to the wheel on the opposite side. This makes turns smoother, braking more stable, and the overall ride much more predictable. Even the angle and stiffness of the suspension change the feel of a car. A sports car uses a tighter, stiffer setup for control at high speeds, while family cars use softer systems to prioritize comfort. A suspension system works quietly beneath every drive, absorbing the chaos of the road so you experience a steady, controlled ride. Bluetooth earbuds. Playing audio wirelessly from your phone to tiny speakers in your ears depends on a short-range radio connection that moves data quietly and efficiently in the background. This connection works through Bluetooth, which sends digital audio signals from your device to the earbuds using low-power radio waves. The signal travels only a few meters, which keeps it stable and limits interference from nearby electronics. Inside each earbud is a microchip that receives and decodes the incoming data. Once decoded, the signal becomes a small electrical current that powers a miniature driver. The driver vibrates in precise patterns, creating sound waves that form music, podcasts, or calls. Synchronization is handled through Bluetooth protocols that control pairing, timing, and data transfer. One earbud often acts as the primary unit, coordinating timing information so both sides play audio simultaneously. This prevents echoes or delays between the left and right channels. Power management is tightly engineered. Each earbud contains a compact rechargeable battery and circuitry that distributes energy efficiently. The charging case supplies additional power, allowing the earbuds to recharge multiple times before the case itself needs to be plugged in. Many earbuds also enhance listening with noise isolation or active noise cancellation. Passive isolation relies on the earbud's shape to block sound, while active systems use built-in microphones to detect ambient noise and produce an opposite sound wave that reduces it. Through coordinated radio signals, tiny speakers, and continuous processing, wireless earbuds deliver audio seamlessly in a compact and portable design. Microscope. Seeing the fine details of a cell, a grain of pollen, or a tiny organism becomes possible thanks to a setup of precisely arranged lenses that bend light in very controlled ways. When light reflects off a small object, it enters the objective lens, the lens closest to the sample. This lens bends and spreads the light to create an enlarged image inside the microscope's tube. The eyepiece lens then magnifies that image again, producing the detailed view you see when you look through it. Together, these layers of magnification reveal structures too small for the unaided eye. But magnification alone isn't what makes microscopes useful. Resolution, the ability to separate 2 points that are extremely close together, is what allows fine details to appear clearly. Good optics can reveal the shapes of bacteria, the structure of plant cells, or the textures of tiny particles. Beyond optical microscopes, electron microscopes use beams of electrons instead of light. Because electrons have a much shorter wavelength, they can reveal far smaller structures, from viruses to microscopic surface patterns. These images aren't in natural color, but their level of detail is far beyond what glass lenses can provide. In classrooms, labs, and research centers, microscopes help identify diseases, study materials, and explore biological structures that shape everyday life, all through controlled light, precision engineering, and careful imaging. Telescope. By gathering faint light from distant objects and bringing it into focus, a telescope turns barely detectable signals into visible images. A telescope works by collecting far more light than the human eye can. When light from a star or planet reaches Earth, it's extremely weak after traveling across space. A telescope's objective lens or mirror gathers that light and focuses it to a single point, creating an image that can be magnified for clarity. Refracting telescopes do this with lenses. The front lens bends the incoming light so it converges, and the eyepiece magnifies the result. Reflecting telescopes, which are used more widely today, rely on mirrors instead. A large curved mirror collects the light and reflects it toward a smaller mirror, which directs it into the eyepiece. Mirrors allow for larger designs and avoid color distortions that lenses can introduce. The size of the main lens or mirror determines how much light the telescope can collect. Larger openings reveal dimmer details, from the craters on the Moon in small amateur telescopes to distant galaxies seen through giant observatory mirrors. Modern telescopes expand this idea into other parts of the spectrum. Radio telescopes detect invisible radio waves, and space-based telescopes avoid atmospheric interference altogether, capturing clearer images than ground-based instruments can achieve. By focusing and amplifying faint light, telescopes provide detailed views of objects that would otherwise remain invisible. Motion stabilization. Keeping video steady on a handheld phone relies on a system that actively reduces the tiny movements that occur every time your hands shift. Motion stabilization works by compensating for vibrations and unintended motion in real time. Smartphones accomplish this using both hardware and software that constantly monitor how the device moves while recording. Optical image stabilization, or OIS, handles the physical correction. Inside the camera module, the lens or sensor sits on miniature actuators connected to the phone's gyroscope and accelerometer. When your hand tilts or shakes slightly, these sensors detect the motion, and the actuators shift the camera component in the opposite direction. The adjustment is extremely small yet enough to keep the image centered and reduce visible shake. Electronic image stabilization, or EIS, adds a digital layer of correction. The phone analyzes each video frame, tracks the subject, and aligns the footage by cropping and repositioning the image. This helps counter sudden jolts or uneven motion that OIS alone can't fully smooth out. Most modern phones blend OIS and EIS to keep footage stable during walking, panning, or casual handheld use. Some systems go further by predicting motion before it happens. These algorithms study movement patterns and adjust ahead of time, creating the smoother, floating effects seen in newer smartphone videos. Together, these techniques allow a small camera module to deliver footage that looks controlled and steady, even when recorded during everyday movement. Pacemaker. For many people, every heartbeat is automatic, but for others, staying alive depends on a small device working quietly inside the chest. The pacemaker. A pacemaker is an implanted medical device designed to keep the heart beating at a proper rhythm. It steps in when the heart's natural electrical system becomes too slow or irregular. To understand how it works, it helps to know what controls the heartbeat in the first place. Inside the heart, each beat begins with an electrical signal created by a tiny group of cells called the sinoatrial node. This signal spreads through the heart muscle, causing it to contract and pump blood. When this natural wiring system fails or weakens, the heart can beat too slowly or inconsistently, leading to dizziness, fatigue, or even dangerous pauses. A pacemaker replaces that missing rhythm. The device sits under the skin, usually near the collarbone, and connects to the heart using thin wires called leads. These leads monitor the heart's electrical activity, checking for any delay or missed beat. The moment the pacemaker senses that the heart is falling behind, it sends a small, controlled electrical pulse to trigger a normal heartbeat. Modern pacemakers are more advanced than many people realize. They adjust their pacing depending on your activity, speeding up slightly when you walk, slowing down as you rest, and storing data that doctors can check during follow-ups. Some even work without leads, sitting directly inside the heart itself. Despite their sophistication, pacemakers are built to be reliable, long-lasting, and as unobtrusive as possible. They don't replace the heart's natural function. They support it whenever it needs help. A pacemaker's job is simple but vital, keeping a steady rhythm so the rest of the body can function with ease. Ultrasound. Ultrasound relies on high-frequency sound waves to create real-time images of the inside of the body. Instead of using light or radiation, it sends sound pulses through tissues and interprets the echoes that return. The process begins with a handheld transducer placed on the skin. This device emits short bursts of sound that travel through muscles, organs, and fluids until they reach a boundary, such as the surface of an organ or a shift from soft tissue to bone. Part of each wave reflects back toward the transducer. Those returning echoes are measured and sent to a computer, which calculates their depth based on how long they take to return. Echoes from nearby structures arrive quickly, while deeper tissues send back slower signals. By processing millions of these reflections, the system constructs a moving image that updates instantly as the transducer shifts. Ultrasound is widely used because it's non-invasive, safe, and produces immediate feedback. Clinicians rely on it to examine organ health, guide medical procedures, study blood flow, and monitor pregnancies. Since the images refresh in real time, the device can follow motion, from a beating heart to fluid movement, without delay. Modern ultrasound machines combine precise sound transmission, sensitive detection, and rapid processing to reveal internal structures with clarity and accuracy. CPU. At the core of every modern device is a processor responsible for carrying out instructions and coordinating how the system behaves. This component, known as the CPU, manages the flow of tasks rather than storing data or displaying visuals. A CPU follows a continuous cycle. It fetches an instruction from memory, interprets what that instruction means, executes the required operation, and then moves to the next. This loop runs millions or billions of times per second, depending on the processor's speed. The ability to perform these operations comes from transistors, tiny electronic switches built into the chip. Modern CPUs contain billions of them, each switching on and off incredibly quickly. By arranging these switches in precise patterns, the CPU performs calculations, logic checks, and comparisons, handling everything from simple arithmetic to complex app operations. Many CPUs include multiple cores, allowing them to run several tasks at once. This parallel processing lets a device stream music, browse the web, and manage background processes simultaneously without slowing down. The CPU works closely with memory, storage, graphics processors, sensors, and input devices. It coordinates data movement and timing across all these components, ensuring that each operation happens when and where it should. A CPU's design condenses enormous computational ability into a small chip, enabling fast, reliable performance in everything from phones to laptops to home appliances. Exponential growth. Some changes in life feel slow at first, then suddenly overwhelming. That shift from steady to explosive is the core idea behind exponential growth. Exponential growth happens when something increases by a fixed percentage instead of a fixed amount each step. This means the change builds on itself. Early on, the growth looks calm and almost flat, but as the numbers stack, each new increase becomes larger than the last, creating a sharp curve that rises rapidly. A simple example is compounding money. If you earn interest on a savings account, the interest is added to your balance. The next cycle calculates interest on both the original money and the previous interest. At first, the growth is barely noticeable, but over time, the balance starts rising faster because every gain fuels the next one. You see the same pattern in nature. Bacteria multiply by dividing. One cell becomes 2, then 4, then 8. The jumps are tiny at the beginning, but given time, the population can climb into the millions. Forest fires can spread this way too. Each burning tree can ignite more than one other tree, causing the fire to accelerate quickly. Technology follows a similar curve. When more people adopt a new tool, they create demand for better versions, which attract even more users. Social media platforms, for instance, grow rapidly once a critical number of people join because each new user makes the network more valuable to the next. Exponential growth isn't inherently good or bad. It simply describes a pattern where increases reinforce themselves. It explains why some changes feel quiet for a long time, then suddenly become powerful enough to reshape a system entirely. Entropy. Scenes like a melting ice cube, a cooling cup of tea, or a room gradually drifting into clutter all follow the same underlying principle. Systems naturally tend to move toward disorder. This tendency is what entropy describes. It's a measure of how organized or scattered the particles in a system are. When entropy rises, energy and matter spread out, moving from neat arrangements toward more random ones. At the microscopic level, molecules and atoms are always in motion. In solid ice, they sit in a fixed structure. When heat enters the system, that structure breaks apart, the molecules move more freely, and entropy increases as the ice becomes liquid water. The same pattern shows up in everyday life. A tidy room reflects low entropy because everything is in a specific place. Without constant effort, items drift out of order, and entropy rises. Restoring that order takes energy, just like freezing water back into ice requires removing heat. Entropy also explains why heat flows the way it does. A warm drink cools down because energy spreads from the hotter liquid to the cooler air until both reach a balanced, evenly distributed state. Rather than being a force of decay, entropy simply describes the direction systems naturally move in as energy disperses. It shapes countless familiar processes, guiding the gradual shift from tightly arranged states to ones that are more relaxed and evenly spread out. Chaos theory. Small changes shaping unexpectedly large outcomes is a pattern that appears in many parts of daily life. Systems that behave this way follow the principles often described by chaos theory, frameworks where tiny differences in starting conditions can lead to very different results. These systems aren't random. They follow clear rules, but they involve so many interacting factors that predicting exact outcomes becomes difficult. Weather forecasts are a familiar example. The atmosphere responds to temperature, pressure, humidity, sunlight, and subtle shifts in airflow. A slight change in any one of these can ripple outward, altering conditions hours or days later. Traffic behaves in a similar way. One driver tapping the brakes creates a chain reaction behind them, amplifying into a slowdown even when the road is clear. Each car responds to the previous one, and these small reactions accumulate into noticeable patterns. This sensitivity shows up in everyday routines as well. A moment spent searching for misplaced keys may shift timing just enough to alter the rhythm of an entire morning, affecting who you cross paths with, the traffic you encounter, or the opportunities you notice. The central idea is that complex systems react strongly to small inputs because all their parts influence one another. This creates behavior that's structured, yet hard to predict precisely. Understanding this principle helps explain why certain situations feel unstable or quick to change. It highlights how small actions can build into larger effects when many connected pieces are involved. Encryption. Encryption is a method of securing information by turning readable data into a form that only the intended device or person can interpret. It begins with plain information, such as a message, password, or payment detail, which is processed through a mathematical algorithm that rearranges it into an unreadable pattern. To anyone intercepting it, the result looks like a random string of characters with no obvious meaning. The only way to restore this scrambled data is with a digital key. This key is a specific code that tells the system how to reverse the transformation and convert the information back into its original form. Without the correct key, the data stays locked and indecipherable. This is why intercepted Wi-Fi traffic, stolen files, or captured messages remain protected unless the proper key is available. Most modern encryption relies on a pair of keys. A public key is shared openly so anyone can use it to encrypt information. A private key, held only by the receiving device, is used to unlock it. This setup allows secure communication without requiring both sides to share a secret in advance. On smartphones, encryption also protects stored information. When the device is locked, its data remains scrambled. Entering a passcode or using biometric authentication gives the system access to the necessary keys and makes the information readable again. Though the process happens silently, encryption is continually working in the background, applying mathematical rules that keep digital information secure as it moves between devices and across networks. Search engines. A search engine is a system designed to organize the vast amount of information on the internet and deliver useful results within seconds. It works by maintaining a massive index, a structured catalog of web pages that is constantly updated behind the scenes. To build this index, search engines use automated programs called crawlers. These programs visit websites, follow links, and record what each page contains. The collected information is cleaned, sorted, and stored so it can be searched quickly without needing to load the live web each time. When you enter a query, the search engine doesn't browse the internet in real time. Instead, it searches its prepared index, comparing your words to the data it has already organized. This comparison relies on algorithms that evaluate how well each page matches your query. These algorithms consider many factors: how relevant the content is, how trustworthy the source appears, how often other sites reference it, and how users have interacted with similar results. From there, a ranking system orders the matching pages so the most helpful ones appear at the top. Over time, these systems adapt by analyzing patterns in how people search and what they choose to click on. What feels like a simple search bar is supported by continuous crawling, indexing, and ranking, all designed to make the overwhelming size of the internet understandable and accessible in an instant. Cookies, staying logged in, keeping items in a shopping cart, or returning to a page with your settings already in place, all rely on small pieces of data quietly stored in your browser. These pieces of data, known as cookies, are simple text files that help websites recognize you when you come back. They don't run any code or perform actions on their own. They just store bits of information, like login status, selected language, or layout preferences, that a site needs to keep things consistent. On your first visit, a website sends a cookie to your browser. When you return, your browser sends that cookie back, letting the site match your visit with the information it saved earlier. This is what prevents your account from logging out every time you open a new tab, or what keeps your shopping cart intact after a refresh. Not all cookies do the same job. First-party cookies come from the site you're actively using and handle most of the helpful features, like remembering preferences or keeping track of what's in your cart. Third-party cookies come from services embedded within a site, advertisers, tracking tools, analytics platforms, and they can follow activity across multiple websites to build a clearer picture of browsing habits. While cookies are essential for smooth navigation and personalized experiences, modern browsers include options to restrict or block those that track behavior beyond a single site, giving users more control over privacy. These small text files may be invisible, but they support much of what makes the web feel familiar, functional, and tailored to you from one visit to the next. Trends, patterns in fashion, language, entertainment, and behavior often appear suddenly and spread quickly, creating shared moments that shape how groups move together. These patterns are what we recognize as trends. A trend usually begins with a small group adopting something new, a phrase, a look, a gesture, a product, or even a viewpoint. At first, it may move quietly, but when the idea resonates with people, it spreads across social circles. Humans pay close attention to cues from others, especially when something feels new, interesting, or socially rewarding. This natural tendency accelerates how quickly trends take hold. Digital platforms amplify this process. Social media turns individual actions into visible signals that thousands or millions can observe. When a video spreads rapidly or a style shows up across countless posts, it gains momentum. People respond not only to the idea itself, but to the sense that many others are adopting it too. Trends vary in lifespan. Some flare up briefly, disappearing within days like short-lived memes or viral challenges. Others linger and gradually influence broader culture, altering how we design, communicate, or interact. And occasionally, a trend becomes so widely accepted that it transitions into a long-term norm. Their strength comes from a mix of curiosity, imitation, and social belonging. Even when choices feel personal, the behavior of people around us, both online and offline, subtly shapes what grabs our attention and what we choose to participate in. Trends emerge when the right idea meets the right moment, spreading through groups until they become part of the cultural rhythm. Memes. Most of us scroll past dozens of memes each day without stopping to think about why they spread so quickly or why they feel instantly familiar. A meme is simply an idea that moves from one person to another, usually through images, jokes, or small pieces of culture that people recreate and share. What makes memes unique is how easily they evolve. One person posts a joke, someone else adds a twist, and soon there are hundreds of versions that all feel connected but slightly different. The structure of a meme is designed for simplicity. It uses a relatable setup, a facial expression, a short line of text, or a repeated format, so that anyone can understand it at a glance. Because the template stays the same, the meaning can shift quickly depending on who edits it and what they're reacting to. This flexibility is what makes memes feel alive. Memes also rely heavily on recognition. When you see a familiar format, your brain fills in the context before you even read it. This instant comprehension makes sharing feel effortless. In group chats, comment sections, and social media feeds, memes become a quick way to communicate emotions or reactions without needing a long explanation. Some memes last only a few days, fading once the context disappears. Others become long-term cultural tools used to express common feelings or situations. And sometimes, a meme moves beyond humor altogether, shaping opinions, influencing trends, or even becoming part of political communication. Even though memes look simple, they reveal how fast ideas spread in the digital world. They show how people connect, how they interpret shared experiences, and how culture can shift through small, repeated pieces of content that anyone can create. Productivity. Productivity often comes down to how well we manage our time, attention, and mental energy, rather than how much we try to squeeze into a single day. The systems behind it are surprisingly simple once you strip away the buzzwords. At the core of being productive is the ability to direct attention toward one task at a time. When the brain switches between activities, checking a notification, answering a message, returning to work, it loses efficiency. Each shift forces the mind to reload context, and those tiny delays add up. Structured focus periods work better because they reduce these switches and let the brain maintain a steady rhythm. Another key idea is task clarity. Vague intentions drain energy because the brain struggles to figure out what to do next. When a task is broken into smaller specific steps, it becomes easier to start and easier to continue. This is why checklists, planning tools, and simple routines feel so effective. They remove decision friction. Environment matters too. Visual clutter, noise, and constant digital interruptions compete for attention. By adjusting the surroundings, silencing distractions, designating work zones, or setting boundaries around notifications, it becomes easier to stay in a focused state. Energy management plays just as important a role as focus. Mental alertness rises and falls throughout the day, and productivity improves when tasks are matched to these natural cycles. High energy periods can handle demanding work, while lower energy periods are better suited for simpler or repetitive tasks. Productivity is less about working faster and more about shaping the conditions that help the brain stay engaged. When attention, clarity, and environment align, the workday flows more smoothly, and consistent progress becomes easier to maintain. Negotiation. Negotiation is often seen as a clash of demands, but at its core, it's a process of aligning interests so two sides can walk away with something they value. Every negotiation begins with understanding what each person actually wants. These wants are often layered. There's the surface request, a price, a deadline, a condition, and underneath it, the reason that request matters. Someone asking for a lower price may really need predictability. Someone asking for more time may be avoiding risk. Progress often happens once both sides understand the motivations rather than just the words being spoken. A key part of negotiation is finding the overlap between interests. This doesn't mean compromising on everything. Instead, it means identifying areas where both sides can benefit without losing what's important to them. Sometimes this involves offering something of low cost to you but high value to the other side, such as flexibility, information, or timing. Communication plays a major role. Clear, calm statements help prevent misunderstandings. Listening closely, not just to what is said, but to how it's said, reveals priorities and concerns. Good negotiators ask specific questions, reframe the problem when things get stuck, and look for ways to turn rigid positions into workable options. Preparation is another essential component. Knowing your limits, alternatives, and what you're willing to trade makes decision-making easier in the moment. A strong alternative, often called a fallback option, reduces pressure and creates confidence. Negotiation isn't about winning at someone else's expense. It's about solving a shared problem under different conditions and perspectives. When done well, it creates outcomes that feel stable, practical, and mutually worthwhile. Innovation. Innovation often begins with a quiet observation. noticing something that doesn't work as smoothly as it could, and wondering whether there's a better way to handle it. Most improvements in daily life don't come from sudden flashes of brilliance, but from a slow, steady process of paying attention and adjusting what already exists. The process usually starts with identifying a problem. Sometimes the issue is obvious, like a tool that takes too long to use. Other times it's subtle, revealing itself only after repeated frustration or inefficiency. Once the problem is clear, the next step is imagining what a smoother version of that experience might look like. Real progress comes from iteration. The first attempt is rarely perfect. People test an idea, see where it falls short, refine it, and try again. Many everyday objects, from common appliances to digital apps, exist in their current form because they went through countless small improvements, rather than one dramatic leap forward. Collaboration strengthens this process. Different perspectives highlight different flaws and possibilities. An engineer might solve technical issues, while a designer sees how people interact with the product, and users point out unexpected challenges. These combined viewpoints often lead to solutions that no single person could have created alone. Constraints also shape innovation. Limited time, materials, or space often push people to think more creatively. Some of the most effective solutions came from having fewer resources, not more. Over time, these gradual improvements accumulate. What once seemed advanced becomes normal, and new expectations create new challenges to solve. Innovation isn't about constant reinvention. It's about steady, thoughtful progress that makes everyday life easier, clearer, or more efficient. Problem solving. Problem solving begins the moment something doesn't unfold as planned. A task stalls, a message confuses you, or a step in your routine stops working. Even though it feels automatic, the mind follows a structured path each time it tries to fix something. It starts with recognizing the issue accurately. Instead of jumping to the quickest reaction, the mind pauses just long enough to understand what's actually wrong. This step matters because misidentifying the problem often leads to fixing the wrong thing. Once the situation is clear, the brain starts matching it to past experiences, searching for patterns that feel familiar. From there, it begins generating options. Some ideas are simple, like switching to a different approach when the first one fails. Others are more inventive, rearranging a task or reframing the goal to make progress possible. At this stage, the aim isn't to find the perfect solution, just a set of possibilities worth considering. The mind then filters these options quickly, removing anything too impractical or costly until one workable choice remains. Applying that choice is where the process becomes real. The solution is tested, observed, and adjusted. If it works, the problem fades. If not, the new information becomes part of the next attempt. This loop continues naturally, especially with problems that don't have straightforward answers. Emotion also influences the process. Calm focus widens perspective and helps ideas connect. Stress narrows attention, making it harder to evaluate options clearly. Sometimes the most effective step is simply taking a moment to reset. Problem solving is the ongoing ability to recognize obstacles, understand their cause, and shape a better path forward. A quiet skill that supports nearly every action in daily life. Karma. Karma describes a simple, familiar idea. The choices we make shape the experiences that eventually come back to us. It isn't about instant reward or punishment. It's about how behavior creates patterns that gradually influence our lives. At the center of this idea is cause and effect. Every action produces an outcome, and those outcomes guide what happens next. When someone consistently treats others with patience or honesty, they tend to build trust and stronger connections. When someone acts with frustration or disregard, tension and distance often follow. These results aren't mystical. They're just the natural consequences of how behavior shapes social environments. Karma also grows through repetition. The actions we repeat become habits, and those habits form the identity people recognize in us. Someone who regularly shows up for others gains a reputation for reliability, which attracts better opportunities. Someone who avoids responsibility creates uncertainty, leading others to rely on them less. Over time, these small effects accumulate, creating the sense that life is reinforcing our patterns. There's an internal dimension as well. Positive actions tend to create a sense of stability, confidence, or calm, while negative actions often leave behind stress, guilt, or defensiveness. These emotional states influence the choices we make next, creating a loop that can gradually shift life toward growth or stagnation. Karma works not through supernatural force, but through behavior-shaping circumstances, habits shaping character, and character shaping the world we interact with each day. It's the long-term reflection of how we think, act, and respond, an echo of our choices returning to us over time. Immune system. Your immune system is working every moment, even when you feel perfectly fine. It's the body's built-in defense network, designed to recognize threats and keep you functioning without you having to think about it. It starts with the first layer of protection, the barriers. Your skin, the lining of your nose, and even your tears act as shields that stop many germs from entering in the first place. Most of the time, these barriers handle the problem before it becomes one. When something does slip through, the second layer activates. This part of the immune system uses quick-acting cells that detect anything unfamiliar and attempt to eliminate it immediately. For example, when you get a small cut on your finger, these cells rush to the spot and create redness and swelling as they work to clear out harmful bacteria. The next stage is the adaptive system, which is slower but far more precise. It studies the invader, builds a targeted response, and remembers it for the future. This is why you usually only get chickenpox once, or why vaccines work. The immune system creates memory cells that act like long-term instructions, ready to react faster if the same threat shows up again. Everyday experiences reflect this process. When you feel tired during an illness, your body is redirecting energy so the immune system can work more effectively. When your throat feels sore, it's often the immune response, not the virus itself, causing inflammation as it fights the infection. The immune system is constantly learning and adapting, managing countless threats without drawing attention to itself. It keeps you stable by identifying danger, responding quickly, and remembering what it has already overcome. The immune system is the quiet protective network that keeps your body safe every day. Evolution. Evolution is something you experience every day, even if you rarely think about it. Every plant you pass, every animal you see, and even your own body are the result of millions of small changes collected over an enormous stretch of time. At its core, evolution is simply change. Living things produce offspring, and those offspring are never exact copies. Small differences appear naturally. Some of these differences make survival a little easier, while others don't help as much. When a helpful trait gives an organism even a slight advantage, it is more likely to survive long enough to reproduce, passing that trait forward. Over long periods, these small advantages stack up. A tiny improvement in eyesight, slightly stronger limbs, or a better sense of smell can shape an entire species. The slow build-up of these changes is why giraffes have long necks, why birds have wings, and why humans developed complex brains. You can see the same process on much shorter timescales too. Bacteria become resistant to antibiotics because the few with a natural resistance survive the treatment and multiply. Plants in harsh environments develop thicker leaves or deeper roots over generations. Even dog breeds are a form of guided evolution, created by humans choosing certain traits and encouraging them to continue. Evolution doesn't have a goal or a direction. It responds to the environment, keeping traits that work and letting go of those that don't. When environments change, species must adapt with them or risk fading out. All around you, evolution is still unfolding. It shapes behavior, appearance, and survival strategies in every living organism. It is the quiet, steady process that explains how life becomes more suited to its surroundings with each passing generation. Blood clotting. A cut or scrape sets off one of the body's most intricate protective responses, turning a small injury into a tightly controlled repair project. The process begins the moment a blood vessel is damaged. The vessel narrows slightly to slow the flow, and platelets, tiny cell fragments that act like first responders, move in quickly. They cling to the broken edges and to one another, forming a temporary plug that stabilizes the area. From here, the clotting cascade takes over. This is a sequence of chemical steps where each reaction activates the next, gradually building toward the formation of fibrin. Fibrin strands create a mesh that threads through the platelet plug, strengthening it so it can withstand movement and pressure. This woven structure is what gives a clot its durability. As healing progresses, the body breaks down the clot step by step, clearing space for new tissue to replace the damaged area. The timing has to be precise. If clotting happens too slowly, bleeding becomes dangerous. If it happens too easily or in places where there's no injury, clots can form inside blood vessels and disrupt circulation. Blood clotting is a finely tuned balance, a rapid, coordinated response that protects the body and then recedes once the repair is underway. Cell division. A single cell can create two new ones with extraordinary precision, and this constant renewal is what allows the body to grow, heal, and stay functional. The process begins long before the moment a cell actually splits. First, it copies all of its DNA so each future cell receives a complete set of genetic instructions. Once the DNA is duplicated, it condenses into chromosomes that line up in the center of the cell, ready to be separated. Structural fibers then pull these chromosomes apart, sorting them into two identical groups that move to opposite ends of the cell. With the genetic material divided evenly, the outer membrane begins to tighten. The cell slowly pinches in the middle until it becomes two independent cells, each fully capable of carrying out its role. This cycle is guided by internal signals that determine when a cell should divide, delay, or stop. These controls are crucial. Without them, cells might multiply too quickly or unpredictably. Proper regulation is what keeps growth steady and repairs accurate. Cell division is a carefully timed sequence that maintains the body's structure and stability, allowing tissues to renew and injuries to heal through millions of small coordinated steps. Circadian rhythm. Your body follows a repeating daily rhythm that influences when you feel awake, when you get tired, and how your energy rises and falls throughout the day. This built-in timing system works in the background, coordinating processes like body temperature, digestion, and alertness. At the center of this cycle is the brain's master clock, a small cluster of nerve cells that keeps track of time by responding to environmental cues, especially light. When daylight reaches your eyes in the morning, the clock signals the body to become active. Alertness hormones increase, temperature rises slightly, and the brain shifts into daytime mode. As evening approaches and light fades, the clock triggers the release of melatonin, preparing the body for rest. Daily habits can strengthen or disrupt this rhythm. Late-night screen use, irregular sleep schedules, or inconsistent meal times can confuse the clock, making it harder to fall asleep or wake up naturally. Traveling across time zones creates the same effect, which is why jet lag feels like your body is running on the wrong schedule. This timing system influences far more than sleep. It affects mood, concentration, appetite, and even immune function. When the rhythm stays aligned, the body runs smoothly. When it drifts, the effects show up quickly in how you feel. Circadian rhythm is the internal structure that keeps your day organized, setting the pace for how your body functions from 1 hour to the next. Adrenal response. Your body has a built-in system that reacts instantly to anything that feels urgent, surprising, or potentially dangerous. This fast response comes from two small glands that sit just above your kidneys. They release hormones designed to help you move, think, and react more quickly. The most familiar hormone in this process is adrenaline. When your brain detects something important happening, it sends a signal to the adrenal glands. Almost immediately, adrenaline enters the bloodstream, increasing heart rate, deepening breathing and making your muscles more prepared for sudden movement. Your senses sharpen as well, which is why you can react faster than usual when something unexpected happens. This reaction isn't limited to emergencies. Everyday situations, a tense conversation, an unexpected notification, or an exciting moment can trigger smaller bursts. These mild releases are behind the brief rush of energy or the sudden alertness you feel before a challenging task. A second hormone, cortisol, supports the body during longer periods of stress. It helps regulate energy, maintain awareness, and keep the body steady when demands continue over time. Under normal conditions, cortisol rises in the morning to help you wake up and declines as the day progresses. Issues arise when this system is activated too frequently. Constant stress can leave adrenaline and cortisol elevated for longer than necessary, leading to restlessness, low energy, or disrupted sleep. The adrenal response is the body's quick-acting support system, offering immediate strength and focus whenever the environment changes suddenly. Reflex actions. Some of the fastest movements your body makes happen without any conscious decision at all. These automatic reactions are built to protect you by acting before the brain has time to analyze a situation. They work through a shortcut in the nervous system. Sensors in the skin detect danger, heat, sharp edges, sudden pressure, and send a signal straight to the spinal cord. Instead of waiting for the brain to interpret the signal, the spinal cord sends an immediate instruction back to the muscles, triggering a quick movement. Only after the response is complete does the brain receive the information and create the sensation of pain or awareness. These rapid responses aren't limited to avoiding harm. Everyday coordination depends on them. If you stumble, your legs adjust instantly to stop the fall. If something moves toward your eyes, you blink before you consciously register the threat. Even standing relies on a constant stream of tiny reflex corrections that keep your balance steady. Internal processes rely on reflexes as well. Your pupils tighten when exposed to sudden brightness. Your stomach releases digestive enzymes when food arrives, and your airways react automatically to irritation. These internal adjustments happen continuously, ensuring the body runs smoothly without deliberate control. Reflex actions are the nervous system's fastest tools for protection and stability, allowing the body to respond to change long before conscious thought catches up. Chromosome. Inside each of your cells is a compact system for storing genetic information, and chromosomes are the structures that keep that information organized and protected. A chromosome is a tightly wound bundle of DNA wrapped around small proteins that help maintain its structure. This packaging allows an enormous amount of genetic material to fit inside a microscopic cell. Humans typically have 46 chromosomes arranged in 23 pairs, and each pair contains genes that influence physical traits, biological functions, and even parts of your immune system. Their role becomes especially clear during cell division. Before a cell splits, its chromosomes make complete copies of themselves. Each chromosome forms two identical chromatids, which separate during division so both new cells receive the full set of genetic instructions. This accuracy keeps your body growing, healing, and replacing cells over your lifetime. Chromosomes also explain why traits run in families. You inherit one chromosome from your mother and one from your father for each pair. The blend of these sets creates your unique combination of characteristics. Small variations in the genes within chromosomes contribute to differences in appearance, behavior, and certain health tendencies. Occasionally, errors occur when chromosomes copy or separate. Missing or extra chromosomes can lead to noticeable developmental differences, while subtle structural changes may affect how specific genes function. These events are uncommon, but they highlight how crucial chromosome organization is. Chromosomes function as the cell's system for storing, protecting, and passing on DNA, ensuring that genetic information moves from one generation of cells and one generation of people with remarkable precision. Genetic mutation. Genetic mutations are small alterations in DNA, the long code that tells cells how to build and maintain the body. Because DNA is copied over and over as cells divide, occasional errors naturally appear. Most are repaired immediately, but any change that remains becomes part of the cell's genetic material. Mutations arise in several ways. Some develop when a cell is exposed to stress like UV light, chemicals, or natural radiation. Others appear randomly during normal DNA copying. Some are inherited and passed down through chromosomes. Regardless of the source, the result is the same: a shift in the DNA sequence. These changes vary widely in their effects. Many mutations are silent, producing no noticeable difference. Some interfere with important genes and lead to health problems. Others provide advantages, improving how a protein functions or allowing an organism to adapt more effectively. Over long stretches of time, these beneficial changes contribute to evolution. Inside the body, cells constantly check their DNA for errors. When a mutation disrupts normal activity, the cell may repair it, deactivate the faulty section, or, if necessary, destroy itself to prevent harm. This built-in oversight is why most mutations never cause issues. Mutations are simply variations in the genetic code, and they drive the ongoing changes that shape life from one generation to the next. Mitochondria. Every cell in your body needs energy to function, and one tiny structure supplies most of that power: the mitochondrion. A mitochondrion converts nutrients from food into a usable energy form for the cell. Depending on how active a tissue is, a cell may have hundreds or even thousands of them. Muscle cells, which constantly need fuel, contain especially large numbers. The energy-making process begins when nutrients enter the mitochondria and move through a series of chemical reactions. The final stage produces ATP, a molecule that works like a rechargeable battery for the cell. Whenever a cell needs to move, divide, send signals, or repair itself, ATP provides the immediate fuel. Mitochondria stand out because they contain their own DNA, separate from the DNA in the cell nucleus. This small loop of genetic material is inherited almost entirely from the mother. Scientists trace this feature back to the idea that mitochondria were once independent organisms that formed a long-term partnership with early cells, a partnership that eventually became permanent. Beyond producing energy, mitochondria help regulate temperature, manage cellular waste, and signal when damaged cells should shut down to protect the body. When mitochondria become less efficient, overall energy levels drop, and many of the body's systems feel the impact. These small structures work continuously, turning food into the energy that powers movement, thought, and everyday cellular activity. Medication. Most people use medication at some point in their lives, yet the way these small tablets and capsules work inside the body is often overlooked. Medication is a carefully designed chemical compound that interacts with the body to produce a specific effect. Once swallowed, inhaled, injected, or applied to the skin, it enters the bloodstream and circulates to where it's needed. Each medication has a shape and structure that allows it to bind to particular cells or receptors, working much like a lock and key fit. When the drug connects with its target, it can activate, block, or adjust a biological pathway. Different conditions call for different mechanisms. Antihistamines calm an overactive allergy response. Antibiotics interfere with bacterial growth. Pain relievers slow the production of chemicals that signal discomfort. Despite these differences, the underlying principle is the same. Medicines guide or correct the body's natural processes to restore balance. Before any medication becomes available, it undergoes years of testing to ensure safety, reliability, and proper dosing. Researchers measure how fast the body absorbs it, how long it stays active, and how it's broken down. This information determines the right amount to take. Too little may not help, and too much can overwhelm the system. Side effects can occur when the drug influences pathways beyond its intended target. Most are mild, but they highlight how closely connected the body's systems are. Medication is a practical tool in modern health, offering precise, controlled ways to support the body when it needs help. Sedatives. Many people have taken a sedative at least once, whether during a medical procedure or to manage stress or sleep, yet the way these medicines create calm often goes unnoticed. Sedatives work by slowing activity in the brain and nervous system. Instead of shutting systems down, they soften the intensity of signals moving through the brain's communication pathways. This reduced activity produces a physical and mental loosening. Speech becomes slower, muscles relax, and thoughts feel less crowded. For someone experiencing stress, anxiety, or sleeplessness, this shift brings the body back into a manageable state. Most sedatives enhance the action of a natural calming chemical in the brain. This chemical helps regulate how alert or excitable the brain is at any moment. When a sedative enters the bloodstream and reaches the brain, it binds to receptors that respond to this chemical, making them more active. As these calming signals strengthen, the brain becomes less reactive and settles into a quieter rhythm. Sedatives vary in strength and speed. Some are mild and useful for short-term anxiety, while stronger forms are used in medical settings before procedures. Because they can influence coordination, attention, and short-term memory, they must be used carefully, which is why people are advised to avoid driving or making important decisions after taking them. Regular use can lead to tolerance. Over time, the brain adapts, requiring larger amounts to produce the same effects. For this reason, sedatives are typically recommended for short-term or closely monitored use. At their core, sedatives reduce excess activity in the nervous system, easing both physical tension and mental overload so the body can settle into a calmer state. Psychedelics. Most people know psychedelics for the intense experiences they produce, but the way these substances affect the brain is far more about perception and communication than about hallucination. Psychedelics work by interacting with receptors in the brain that regulate mood, awareness, and sensory processing. One of the main targets is a particular serotonin receptor involved in how the brain interprets signals. When a psychedelic attaches to these receptors, the usual flow of information changes. Regions of the brain that don't normally communicate start exchanging signals, and areas that usually dominate perception loosen their control. This shift reshapes how the brain organizes sights, sounds, thoughts, and emotions. Patterns become more vivid. Ordinary sensations feel layered or unusual. Thoughts that are usually quiet may rise to the surface, and associations form more quickly than usual. Instead of following familiar pathways, the brain explores new ones, which is why experiences can feel expansive, intense, or introspective. The visions people describe aren't created from nothing. They're the brain interpreting internal signals with more freedom than usual. Sensory input blends with imagination, memory, and emotion, creating altered perceptions that feel immersive. In controlled settings, researchers study these effects for potential mental health benefits. The temporary increase in neural flexibility may help people rethink deep-rooted patterns or see problems from new perspectives. But the same openness can also be overwhelming without proper guidance, which is why context and supervision are essential. Psychedelics don't add new senses. They loosen the brain's usual boundaries, allowing signals, memories, and perceptions to mix in ways they normally wouldn't. Ecosystem. Most people don't realize that the world around them is quietly working as one interconnected system. Whether it's a patch of grass in a backyard or a stretch of forest far from cities, every environment is built on relationships that constantly support and shape each other. An ecosystem is the combination of living organisms and the non-living elements they rely on: sunlight, air, water, soil, and climate. Plants sit at the foundation, turning sunlight into energy that fuels everything else. Herbivores rely on those plants, predators rely on the herbivores, and the chain continues, with each layer influencing the next. Just as important as feeding is recycling. When a plant wilts or an animal dies, decomposers like fungi and bacteria step in. They break down the remains and return nutrients to the soil, creating the conditions for new growth. This cycle repeats endlessly, keeping the system balanced and functional. Ecosystems can be as small as a puddle or as vast as an ocean. What makes them fragile is how easily one change spreads. Remove a single species and the effects ripple outward. Add a new one, and the balance can shift dramatically. A change in temperature, rainfall, or soil quality can alter how plants grow, which then affects every organism that depends on them. Human activity adds another layer of influence. Roads, pollution, farming, and construction all reshape habitats, sometimes helping certain species thrive, and sometimes creating challenges for others. These interactions show how deeply connected humans are to the environments around them. An ecosystem is the silent framework that keeps life organized, with each part, big or small, playing a role in maintaining the rhythm of the natural world. Antidepressants. Many people rely on antidepressants without ever seeing the careful science behind how these medications support the brain. Antidepressants work by adjusting the chemical messengers that help brain cells communicate, mainly serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. These messengers influence mood, focus, motivation, and emotional stability. When their balance is disrupted, everyday life can feel heavier, slower, or harder to navigate. Instead of forcing mood changes, antidepressants help restore steadiness to these chemical signals. The most common group, SSRIs, slows down how quickly serotonin is pulled back into nerve cells. By staying active for longer, serotonin can send clearer signals across the brain. Other antidepressants adjust different messengers, but all aim to support communication between brain cells so thoughts and emotions flow more smoothly. The effects build gradually. It usually takes a few weeks for the brain to adapt to the new balance, which is why improvements often appear slowly rather than suddenly. During this period, doctors adjust dosages or switch medications if needed to find the most effective match for each person's biology. These medications don't create artificial happiness. What they often provide is a sense of clarity, reducing emotional weight, easing persistent low mood, and making daily routines feel possible again. For many people, antidepressants work best when combined with therapy, lifestyle adjustments, and social support. At their core, antidepressants help the brain regain equilibrium, giving it the stability needed to handle stress, recover from low mood, and reconnect with life more naturally. Bureaucracy. You cross paths with bureaucracy more often than you think, in a hospital waiting room, at a government office, or even when a workplace asks you to sign yet another form. Bureaucracy is the organizational backbone behind large systems. It exists because once a group grows big enough, decisions can't rely on memory or personal judgment alone. There has to be a predictable process, so things happen the same way every time, whether 100 people need help or a million. At its center are three pillars: rules, records, and roles. Rules outline the steps that must be followed. Records keep information from being lost or forgotten. And roles divide responsibility so each person handles a specific part of the process. When you apply for something like a passport, this design becomes clear. One desk verifies documents, another checks identity, and another approves the application. Each step is meant to reduce errors and keep things consistent. But this same need for consistency can make bureaucracy feel slow. Every verification, signature, and checkpoint aims to prevent mistakes, yet each one adds time. That's why the process sometimes feels repetitive, even though the intention is stability, not delay. Bureaucracy isn't built to be fast. It's built to be reliable. It ensures that records are protected, decisions follow a standard, and services don't depend on who happens to be working that day. In the bigger picture, bureaucracy is the structure that keeps large institutions functioning smoothly, even if the individual steps occasionally test our patience. Education system. You've spent years in classrooms, moving from one grade to the next, but it's easy to overlook the system that quietly shapes that entire journey. The education system is society's organised way of passing knowledge, skills, and shared understanding to the next generation. It exists because learning can't depend on luck. Without a structured approach, people would grow up with vastly different levels of ability. Some fluent in reading, others barely exposed to it. A common system ensures that everyone starts with the same essential tools. It begins with the basics: language, numbers, communication, and early problem solving. These foundational skills act like mental scaffolding. Once they're in place, the system opens into broader subjects: science, mathematics, history, languages, and the arts. Each one teaches a different way of thinking, helping students build logic, creativity, analysis, and social awareness. Behind what students see, an entire framework operates in the background. Curriculum planners decide what should be learned and when. Teachers translate those ideas into daily lessons. Assessments help track progress, not just to grade students, but to spot where support is needed. Standardization keeps the experience roughly consistent for millions of learners, regardless of which school they attend. But structure comes with limitations. With so many students moving through the same path, the pace can feel rigid, and individual learning styles don't always get the space they need. Even so, the broader purpose remains steady. Prepare young people to navigate the world with knowledge, confidence, and the ability to keep learning. At its core, the education system is a long-term strategy, a way for societies to build future generations that are literate, capable, and ready for the complexities of life. Supply chain. You might not think about it, but almost everything you use in a day, your phone, your clothes, your food, has traveled through a long, organized journey before reaching you. A supply chain is the complete path a product takes from raw material to final delivery. It begins at the source: cotton growing in a field, metal being mined, or ingredients being harvested. From there, each material moves to factories where it's shaped, refined, stitched, assembled, or packaged. Every step involves different locations and teams, yet they're all connected in one continuous process. Movement is what keeps this system alive. Trucks, ships, planes, and trains carry goods from one stage to the next. A single shipment might cross multiple borders, pass through ports, and stop at several warehouses before it gets close to you. Each transfer has to be timed and tracked, which is why logistics planning and digital systems are such a huge part of modern supply chains. Warehouses form another essential link. They store products, sort them, and prepare them for distribution. Inside, barcodes, scanners, and automated systems help manage thousands of items at once. Even a small delay, a storm, a driver shortage, a machinery issue can ripple through the chain and slow everything down. To stay efficient, companies try to predict what people will need. They increase production before winter or boost inventory before major sales. When the predictions are off, shelves can empty quickly or stock can pile up. Even though you rarely see it, the supply chain shapes what's available to you, how fast it arrives, and how much it costs. At its heart, a supply chain is a coordinated network that keeps everyday life running smoothly by moving goods from origin to doorstep with precise timing. Census system. Most people think of the census as a brief set of questions that arrives every few years, but it's actually one of the largest coordinated operations a country ever carries out. A census is a nationwide effort to count everyone living within a country and understand how communities are structured. The idea seems simple: gather basic details about people and households, but organizing this on a national scale requires enormous planning. Before a single form is sent out, maps are updated. Population areas are divided into smaller zones, and teams are trained to cover each neighborhood. When the census begins, surveys are distributed online, by mail, or through in-person visits. The questions may appear basic: age, work, education, household size, yet each answer becomes part of a larger statistical picture. These small details help reveal how populations grow, move, and change over time. Once the collection phase ends, the most complex part starts behind the scenes. Millions of responses are verified, digitized, and cleaned. Software checks for duplicates, fills in missing information where possible, and compares data across regions to ensure accuracy. Analysts then interpret these findings to uncover trends that would otherwise remain hidden. The impact of this information stretches across society. Governments use census data to decide where to build schools, hospitals, roads, and public services. Funding allocations depend on it. Businesses rely on it to choose new locations. Researchers use it to study long-term changes in population health, migration, and economic conditions. A census may feel routine on the surface, but it's one of the most powerful tools a society uses to understand its people and plan for the years ahead. Global trade system. Global trade is one of the largest and most intricate systems humans have ever built, linking factories, farms, governments, and shipping networks across the world. At its core, the idea is straightforward. Countries exchange goods and services they can produce efficiently for those they can't. But the machinery behind that exchange is anything but simple. It involves coordinated production, complex transportation routes, legal frameworks, and financial systems operating around the clock. Every product's journey begins at its source: raw materials pulled from the ground, crops grown on farms, or components manufactured in industrial centers. From there, goods move through a global web of trucks, trains, and cargo ships. Container vessels carry thousands of standardized boxes across oceans, guided by weather data, satellite navigation, and highly automated logistics platforms. Beyond transport, trade relies heavily on regulation. Whenever something crosses a border, it must pass through customs, meet safety standards, and comply with international rules. Countries form trade agreements to simplify these steps, reduce tariffs, and ensure smoother exchanges. These agreements shape economic relationships and influence global politics for decades. Finance is woven into every part of the process. A product made in one country may be sold in another using a completely different currency. Banks and international institutions stabilize these conversions so companies can buy, sell, and ship without constant financial uncertainty. When global trade functions well, it makes everyday life feel seamless. Seasonal fruit appears year-round, electronics remain affordable, and medical supplies arrive from multiple corners of the world. When it falters from conflict, natural disasters, or supply chain disruptions, the effects spread quickly through rising prices, shortages, and delays. Global trade works quietly in the background, but its influence is everywhere, shaping what we use, what we pay, and how connected the modern world has become. Democratic system. A democratic system is built on a straightforward principle. The authority to govern comes from the people. Turning that principle into a functioning structure, however, involves many interconnected parts working together over long periods of time. At the public level, the system is most visible through elections. Citizens choose representatives who bring different priorities, policies, and values to the table. Once elected, these leaders shape laws, allocate resources, and guide national decisions. This is the part most people recognize: ballots, campaigns, and the transition of power. But democracy depends just as much on what happens behind the scenes. Checks and balances divide authority among branches of government so that no single group can act unchecked. Legislatures write the laws, courts interpret them, and executives carry them out. Independent institutions, such as election bodies, oversight agencies, and watchdog offices, ensure that this process remains transparent and fair. Individual rights form another essential layer. Freedoms like speech, press, and assembly protect the public's ability to question decisions, challenge leaders, organize movements, and hold institutions accountable. Without these protections, participation would be limited, and the system would lose its balance. Democracy also relies on steady civic engagement. Schools teach the basics of citizenship. Journalism keeps people informed. Community groups, volunteer networks, and local forums give citizens ways to influence issues directly. These everyday activities maintain the connection between public life and political decision-making. A democratic system isn't held together by one moment or one rule. It operates through a continuous balance of participation, accountability, and shared authority, a structure designed to reflect the will of the people while protecting the freedoms that keep the society stable. Waste management. A city's waste system works constantly in the background, coordinating thousands of moving parts to keep everyday life running smoothly. Waste management begins with organized collection. Trucks follow planned routes through neighborhoods, gathering household trash, recycling, and organic waste. What seems like a simple weekly routine is actually a schedule designed to prevent overflow, reduce health risks, and keep operations efficient. After collection, the real sorting begins. Recycling facilities separate materials using conveyor belts, magnets, air jets, and optical scanners that identify plastics, paper, glass, and metals. Each material is processed differently. Metal is melted, plastic is shredded, and paper is pulped. These materials are then used to create new products, reducing the demand for fresh resources. Non-recyclable waste takes another path. Some goes to engineered landfills built with protective layers to stop chemicals from leaking into soil or water. As waste breaks down, landfills capture gases that can be used to produce energy. Other waste is directed to waste-to-energy plants, where controlled burning generates electricity. Organic waste, food scraps, yard debris, biodegradable material, moves to composting facilities. Microorganisms break it down into nutrient-rich compost used for agriculture and landscaping, returning valuable nutrients to the soil and reducing landfill pressure. Modern systems also rely heavily on technology. Sensors track bin levels, software optimizes truck routes, and digital monitoring helps manage landfill capacity and improve recycling accuracy. These tools make the entire network faster, safer, and more sustainable. Waste management is a large, coordinated system that sorts, recycles, disposes, and repurposes the enormous volume of material created every day, ensuring cities remain clean, functional, and environmentally responsible. Power grid. A modern city depends on a constant flow of electricity, and behind that steady supply is an enormous network working quietly every second. The power grid begins with generation. Electricity comes from a mix of sources: natural gas plants, coal stations, nuclear reactors, hydroelectric dams, wind farms, and solar fields. Each uses a different process to create energy, but all feed into the same system with one goal: producing electricity that can travel long distances. Once generated, the electricity passes through transformers that dramatically raise its voltage. High voltage reduces energy loss during travel, allowing power to move efficiently across hundreds of kilometers. From there, it enters the transmission network, the tall, wide-spanning lines stretching across landscapes and connecting regions. As the electricity approaches populated areas, substations step the voltage down in stages. These lower levels are safer and suitable for everyday use. Distribution lines then carry the electricity into neighborhoods, whether through overhead wires or underground cables. Inside homes and buildings, the power flows through a breaker panel that divides it into separate circuits. Each outlet, appliance, and light switch draws from this organized framework. A simple action like charging a phone traces back through countless components that kept the electricity stable along the way. Modern grids layer digital technology on top of this physical infrastructure. Smart meters, automated sensors, and control systems constantly monitor the flow of electricity. They adjust supply, detect faults, and help restore power quickly during outages or extreme weather. The power grid is a vast, interconnected system that keeps electricity moving smoothly from distant generation points to everyday devices, maintaining a rhythm that modern life depends on. Data centers. A surprisingly large part of the internet lives in buildings most people never think about. The massive facilities that store, process, and deliver digital information. A data center is essentially a highly engineered warehouse filled with powerful servers. These machines handle everything from storing photos and messages to running apps, websites, and entire online platforms. Anytime you stream a video or load a web page, your request travels through networks and reaches one of these servers, which sends the data back in milliseconds. Inside the facility, the layout is designed for non-stop operation. Servers are arranged in tall racks, humming continuously as they process huge amounts of information. All of that activity generates significant heat, so cooling becomes one of the most critical systems. Cold aisles, industrial air conditioning units, and sometimes liquid cooling keep temperatures within safe limits so the equipment stays stable. Power infrastructure is built with layers of protection. Data centers draw electricity from the main grid, but also maintain backup generators, batteries, and automated failover systems. This redundancy ensures that even a brief power loss doesn't interrupt the flow of data for millions of users. Security is equally comprehensive. Physical entry is restricted through biometric scanners, surveillance, and controlled checkpoints. Digital defenses, including firewalls, encryption, and constant monitoring, protect the information stored within from cyber threats. These combined systems allow cloud services, communication tools, online businesses, and streaming platforms to operate seamlessly. Even though most people never walk inside one, a data center sits behind nearly every action we take online, keeping information moving reliably around the world. Credit system. A large part of modern finance runs on something most people never see directly: the system that determines how trustworthy someone is with borrowed money. The credit system is essentially a tool for evaluating financial reliability. Banks and lenders use it to decide how much they can safely lend, what interest rate to offer, and whether someone qualifies for a loan or a credit card. Without this structure, lending would be unpredictable and far riskier. Everything begins with credit history. Each time a person pays a bill, uses a credit card, takes a loan, or misses a due date, those actions are recorded by credit bureaus. Over time, these records build a profile that shows how consistently someone manages debt. From this information, a credit score is calculated, a single number that represents financial behavior. High scores typically reflect steady payments and responsible usage, while lower scores can indicate missed dues or high outstanding balances. This number influences approvals, interest rates, and sometimes even rental or job applications. Behind the scenes, algorithms examine patterns such as repayment habits, credit utilization, and the length of someone's financial activity. These patterns help predict how likely a person is to handle future debt responsibly. The system isn't flawless, but it provides lenders with a structured way to assess risk. When someone applies for credit, lenders look at their score, income, and existing obligations before deciding. Any new loan or credit line then becomes part of their ongoing financial record, influencing future opportunities. The credit system acts as a framework for financial trust, shaping how people access loans, mortgages, education financing, and other opportunities that rely on borrowing. Copyright system. Creative work doesn't just appear online freely. It's protected by a framework designed to give artists, writers, and developers control over what they make. This framework is the copyright system. Copyright is a legal structure that grants creators exclusive rights over their original work. Whether it's a novel, a film, an illustration, a song, or a piece of software, the moment it's produced in a fixed form, the creator gains the authority to decide how it's copied, shared, or sold. This protection exists for a simple reason. People are far more likely to create when they know their work can't be taken and used without permission. Without copyright, anyone could duplicate a creative work and profit from it, leaving the original creator with nothing. Once a work is created, the rights holder can license it, transfer ownership, or restrict usage entirely. Licensing is common in modern media. Streaming platforms, publishing houses, advertising agencies, and tech companies often pay to use music, images, or code created by others. Using copyrighted material without permission is considered infringement. This includes sharing pirated movies, reposting images without authorization, or distributing someone's content as your own. To handle these situations, creators or rights holders can issue takedown notices, claim compensation, or pursue legal action when necessary. A large support system exists behind the scenes. Copyright offices, international treaties, and coordinated legal standards ensure that creative work is protected across borders. These systems aim to balance two goals: rewarding creators fairly and allowing public access through things like fair use, educational exceptions, or licensed distribution. Copyright is ultimately a safeguard for creativity, making it possible for artists and innovators to share their work confidently in a world where digital copies can travel instantly. Pareidolia, a piece of burnt toast pulled from the oven once sold for thousands of dollars. Why? Because people swore they could see the face of the Virgin Mary scorched into its surface. What looks like divine intervention to some is, in fact, a classic example of pareidolia. The phenomenon is common: a cloud shaped like a rabbit, a power socket that seems to smile back at you, the man in the moon. Across cultures and centuries, people have reported faces or figures hidden in random patterns. In medieval Europe, unusual rock formations were said to hold religious meaning. In modern times, social media amplifies these sightings, with every oddly shaped shadow or reflection framed as uncanny proof that reality is winking at us. Neuroscience offers a straightforward explanation. Human survival depended on quickly detecting faces and figures, recognizing friend from foe in an instant. The brain's fusiform face area is so sensitive that it sometimes overfires, spotting a face where none exists. In a 2009 fMRI study, participants shown random noise patterns activated the same face processing circuits as when they looked at actual faces. The system errs on the side of false positives because missing a real face would carry a greater cost. Yet the experience remains strangely magical. What begins as a visual misfire becomes charged with meaning because we can't help but project stories onto what we see. A coffee stain isn't just a blot. It's a profile, a sign, maybe even a message. The fact to remember is that pareidolia is not evidence of hidden messages in the world. It is evidence of how powerfully our brains search for order, even when reality is just noise. Placebo effect. In the 1950s, a surgeon named Henry Beecher treated wounded soldiers in World War II. When morphine supplies ran out, he injected men with simple saline solution instead. To his surprise, many reported pain relief strong enough to allow surgery. This striking case became one of the most famous examples of the placebo effect. The placebo effect occurs when a treatment with no active ingredient still produces real improvement. It isn't just in the mind. Brain imaging studies have shown that when someone believes they're receiving pain medication, their brain actually releases endorphins and activates the same neural pathways as if they had taken the drug. In trials for antidepressants, painkillers, and even Parkinson's treatments, placebos have triggered measurable benefits for a portion of patients. Historically, the effect was often dismissed as deception. In older medical traditions, healers relied on rituals, colored powders, or elaborate procedures that worked largely through expectation. Modern science reframes it differently. Belief and context can activate the body's own chemical responses. A capsule's color, a doctor's confidence, even the setting of treatment can influence outcomes. The power of the placebo also explains why rigorous clinical trials must compare new drugs against placebo groups. Without that control, it's impossible to know whether the improvement came from the treatment itself or from the brain's self-generated response. The fact to remember is that the placebo effect is not a cure, but a glitch in how expectation rewires perception and pain. It shows that belief alone can alter brain chemistry, a reminder that sometimes the story the mind tells is powerful enough to change the body. Mass hysteria. In 1962, a girls' school in Tanzania erupted in uncontrollable laughter. It spread from student to student, then into nearby villages, eventually lasting months and disrupting thousands of lives. Doctors found no virus, no toxin, no clear medical cause. What happened was mass hysteria, also known as mass psychogenic illness. Mass hysteria occurs when groups of people develop shared symptoms without a physical trigger. The symptoms can range from fainting and nausea to shaking, convulsions, or uncontrollable laughter. What begins with one or two cases spreads quickly through social contact, observation, and suggestion. In a tightly knit group under stress, the brain's interpretation of threat or illness can leap from person to person. History is filled with striking examples. In medieval Europe, outbreaks of so-called dancing plagues saw crowds convulsing or moving for days without explanation. In the 1980s, a fainting epidemic in a US textile factory led investigators to test the air for toxins, but nothing was found. Each time, the pattern followed the same arc: a stressful environment, a triggering symptom, and rapid spread through social reinforcement. Modern neuroscience suggests the mechanism lies in the brain's mirror systems and heightened attention. When one person exhibits distress, others unconsciously mimic or anticipate the same sensation. Stress hormones amplify the effect, making the experience feel vividly real. Functional brain scans show that perceived symptoms can activate the same neural pathways as actual illness. In practice, this means mass hysteria is not a sign of collective madness, but a reminder of how powerfully human perception is shaped by context. When fear or stress runs high, the boundary between imagination and reality can dissolve, and entire groups can glitch together. False awakening. The alarm clock buzzes. You sit up, stretch, and start your morning routine. But as you head to the door, something feels wrong. The walls shift, the light bends, and then you jolt awake in bed, realizing you never got up at all. This looping illusion is called a false awakening. Reports of false awakenings go back centuries. Writers and philosophers describe dreams where they believed they had risen from bed, only to find themselves still asleep. In some cases, the cycle repeats multiple times, creating the unsettling impression of being trapped in an endless reset. Neuroscience explains it through the mechanics of REM sleep. During dreaming, the brain's visual and motor systems are highly active, generating convincing simulations of real life. If the dream focuses on waking itself, the result is a dream so realistic that it feels indistinguishable from reality. EEG studies show that false awakenings often occur during transitions between REM and lighter sleep stages, when awareness begins to creep in, but full consciousness has not yet returned. Cultural interpretations once framed these episodes as signs of spiritual journeys or warnings from beyond. In folklore, repeatedly waking up inside a dream was sometimes linked to the soul wandering or to omens of misfortune. Today, researchers view it as a benign misfire. The brain rehearses waking before actually allowing the body to emerge from sleep. Though harmless, false awakenings can leave people disoriented or anxious, particularly if combined with sleep paralysis or vivid dream imagery. The memory of waking again and again lingers even after full consciousness has returned. The fact to remember is that false awakenings are not supernatural loops, but brief timing errors, moments when the dream world perfectly imitates reality before letting go. Earworm. Late at night, silence fills the room. Yet in the quiet, a tune rises unbidden, a chorus from a song you haven't heard in days, repeating on a loop. No radio, no headphones, just the brain playing DJ without permission. This is the earworm. Also called involuntary musical imagery, earworms are nearly universal. More than 90% of people report experiencing them, sometimes daily. They're rarely full songs. Most often a fragment, like the hook or chorus, looping with uncanny persistence. Neuroscience has mapped part of the mechanism. The auditory cortex, which processes sound, remains active even when no music is present. Catchy or incomplete melodies exploit the brain's predictive system, which seeks to resolve unfinished patterns. A 2012 study in consciousness and cognition confirmed that songs with repetitive structure or unusual intervals are especially prone to becoming stuck. Conditions like stress, fatigue, or idle activities such as commuting or showering provide the mental space for these loops to surface. Historically, the experience was described in more colourful ways. German writers coined the term Ohrwurm in the 19th century, comparing it to a worm burrowing into the ear. Some folk traditions treated repetitive songs as charms or curses, sound given a kind of invasive power. Though often annoying, earworms are not harmful. Strategies to dislodge them range from finishing the song in full to distracting the mind with another task or tune. Usually, though, they fade on their own. Earworms reveal that memory doesn't simply archive the past. It can reanimate it, sometimes without invitation. In these moments, the brain reminds us it has its own soundtrack, playing on a loop until it decides to let go. Wrong word glitch. On a quiet street at night, you walk alone. Each step lands with its familiar rhythm until suddenly you hear another set of footsteps behind you. You turn. No one is there. The sound vanishes, leaving only your heartbeat and the faint echo of your own stride. This is the false footstep echo, a glitch where the brain interprets ordinary sounds as the presence of another walker. Folklore has long tied it to spirits or unseen companions. In Scottish tradition, phantom steps were considered warnings of danger. In Japanese ghost stories, they were omens of restless souls. But modern science offers a different perspective. Research in auditory perception shows that the brain doesn't simply record sound, it constantly predicts it. Each time your heel strikes the ground, your nervous system expects the returning noise of the environment, the bounce off walls, pavement, or open space. When echoes arrive slightly out of sync, or when background noise masks them, the brain sometimes generates the missing beat. The result is a phantom footstep. Neuroscientists studying misattributed sounds link the effect to auditory pareidolia, the same process that makes us hear voices in static or patterns in meaningless noise. It is the auditory system favouring false positives, a survival mechanism tuned to notice possible threats rather than risk ignoring them. Clinically, similar misperceptions are documented in patients with heightened anxiety or those walking in acoustically complex environments, like empty parking garages. But even in healthy brains, the effect is common, especially when we're tired or on high alert. What actually matters is that the false footstep echo isn't a ghostly presence. It's the brain erring on the side of caution, reminding us that survival once depended on detecting the faintest sound of someone following close behind. Hypnic jerk. Most people have felt it. You're drifting at the edge of sleep when your body suddenly snaps awake. The jolt is sharp, almost as if you've stumbled, even though you haven't moved from your bed or chair. This brief, startling event is known as a hypnic jerk. Sleep researchers classify it as one of the most common phenomena during the transition into rest. Studies estimate that up to 70% of people experience it, especially in periods of fatigue or high stress. As the nervous system winds down, muscles loosen, breathing slows, and the brain shifts gears. But occasionally, the process misfires. A burst of activity rushes through the body, snapping it back into wakefulness. One leading theory suggests that the reflex has evolutionary roots. As the body relaxes, the brain may misinterpret the sensation as a loss of balance. To protect the sleeper, it triggers a rapid contraction of muscles. In a distant past, when humans or their ancestors may have slept in precarious positions such as trees, this reflex could have prevented dangerous falls. Cultural interpretations added their own explanations. In European folklore, a hypnic jerk might have been seen as a sign of a spirit's interference. In other traditions, it was linked to the soul temporarily leaving the body during sleep. While these accounts gave the event symbolic meaning, neuroscience explains it as a simple misalignment between body and brain during the fragile onset of sleep. The hypnic jerk is harmless, though it can be startling enough to interrupt the path into rest. Rather than a warning of danger, it is a leftover reflex, a quick reminder that the machinery of sleep doesn't always shift smoothly, even in something as ordinary as drifting off. Sleep identity confusion. A woman wakes in the middle of the night, sits up in bed, and for several minutes cannot recall who she is. She recognizes the room, the clock, the furniture, but not her own identity. Panic sets in before, just as suddenly, her sense of self returns. This rare but unsettling episode is called sleep identity confusion. The phenomenon occurs when the transition from sleep to wakefulness is disrupted. During normal waking, the brain quickly reassembles orientation, where you are, what time it is, and who you are. But in sleep identity confusion, that process lags. For a brief period, autobiographical memory and self-recognition fail to load, leaving the person conscious but unmoored. Sleep researchers have documented it most often in people with irregular sleep schedules, exhaustion, or underlying sleep disorders. A 1991 study in the journal Sleep described multiple cases of patients waking without awareness of their own names or relationships, sometimes lasting several minutes. Though alarming, the episodes typically resolve on their own without lasting harm. Historically, such experiences were interpreted as possession, temporary madness, or evidence of the soul wandering during the night. In some cultures, waking without memory of self was seen as punishment for disturbing spirits. Modern neuroscience frames it differently, as a glitch in the reactivation of the default mode network, the set of brain regions responsible for maintaining self-awareness. While rare, sleep identity confusion highlights how fragile the sense of self can be. The continuity of identity, something most people assume is constant, depends on brain systems that can, under strain, briefly fail. What actually matters is that sleep identity confusion isn't a sign of lost sanity, but a temporary misfire in memory and awareness, a reminder that even the self can glitch. Eye floaters. A bright blue sky stretches overhead, and as you look up, faint shapes drift across your vision. Tiny threads, dots, or cobweb-like forms that slide when your eyes move. Try to focus on them and they dart away. These are eye floaters, one of the most common visual glitches. Almost everyone experiences them at some point, especially when staring at a clear background like a white wall or cloudless sky. For centuries, people puzzled over these mysterious shapes. In medieval texts, they were sometimes described as flying flies or even spiritual visions. Some believed they were omens, signs from the divine, or evidence of hidden life forms. Modern science provides a clearer explanation. Inside the eye, the vitreous, a gel-like substance that fills the space between lens and retina, gradually changes with age. Tiny clumps of collagen or cellular debris form and cast shadows on the retina. What you perceive as drifting shapes are actually those shadows projected onto your field of vision. Ophthalmologists can observe them directly during eye exams, confirming their physical origin. Research shows that floaters are generally harmless, though sudden bursts of them may signal retinal detachment and require medical attention. For most people, they remain an occasional nuisance, visual static that fades into the background when the brain adapts. What makes floaters feel uncanny is how they expose the mechanics of sight itself. The eye isn't a perfect lens feeding reality directly. It's an organ with imperfections, and those imperfections sometimes render their own images. The fact to remember is that eye floaters are not external objects or hidden creatures, but shadows inside the eye. Tiny reminders that even vision itself can glitch. Synchronicity. A woman thinks of an old friend she hasn't spoken to in years. Moments later, her phone buzzes with a message from that exact person. To her, it feels uncanny, like the universe answered a thought. This kind of meaningful coincidence is what Carl Jung called synchronicity. The idea first gained attention in the 20th century, when Jung described it as two events connected not by cause and effect, but by meaning. To those experiencing it, synchronicity feels like hidden design, a personal signal written into the world. Cultural traditions long before Jung also pointed to signs and omens, where unrelated events were linked through interpretation. Science takes a different angle. Researchers studying probability and attention note that coincidences are statistically inevitable. With billions of daily thoughts and actions, it's not surprising that some align in striking ways. The human brain, tuned to spot patterns, highlights those rare alignments while discarding the countless times nothing matched. A 2004 study by mathematician David Hand described these events as the improbability principle, showing how apparently impossible coincidences happen regularly once you account for the sheer volume of life's events. Still, the personal weight of synchronicity is real. When timing feels perfect, a song lyric aligning with a mood, a symbol appearing right when you need it, the experience can reinforce belief, motivation, or connection. It doesn't mean the world is coded for you, but it does reveal how meaning is constructed in the mind. What actually matters is that synchronicity shows how easily our brains can weave randomness into narrative. The coincidences are real, but the story we attach to them is the glitch that turns chance into destiny. Amazon, e-commerce. Online shopping feels instant, a tap, a confirmation, and a package on the way. But behind that simplicity is an enormous system built to keep everything moving smoothly. Amazon's e-commerce network is one of the most advanced examples of this scale. It begins with the digital storefront, which organizes millions of products from sellers around the world. Algorithms constantly sort, rank, and recommend items by analyzing availability, pricing, reviews, and past browsing behavior. This is what makes it possible to find exactly what you need with just a few keywords. Once an order is placed, the physical side of the system comes alive. Amazon stores inventory in a vast network of fulfillment centers, huge warehouses supported by automated robots and human workers. Instead of grouping similar items together, products are stored in whichever space is open. This scattered layout lets the system place new items quickly and retrieve them efficiently because every location is digitally tracked. As soon as your order reaches the queue, robots move shelves toward pickers who collect the items and send them for packing. Each package is scanned, weighed, labeled, and placed on conveyor belts that automatically sort shipments by destination. From there, Amazon's transportation network takes over. A combination of sorting hubs, aircraft, delivery vans, and last-mile drivers. Throughout the process, tracking codes update the system automatically. These updates help predict delays, reroute shipments, and maintain accurate delivery windows. Amazon's e-commerce operation may look simple from the outside, but it runs on an intricate combination of logistics, automation, and real-time data that allows products to move across vast distances with consistent speed and precision. Uber gig commerce. Calling a ride through an app feels straightforward, but beneath that simplicity is a system coordinating thousands of moving pieces at once. Uber operates as a real-time network where software and human drivers work together to create on-demand transportation. When a ride request is made, the app sends your location, destination, and preferred ride type to Uber's servers. Instantly, algorithms search for nearby drivers, analyzing factors like distance, traffic, and overall network load. The match is deliberate. The goal is to connect you with a driver who can arrive quickly while keeping the wider system efficient. Once a match is made, navigation comes into play. The app relies on live traffic data to guide the driver toward you and then to your destination. Roads closing, traffic building, or sudden congestion are all handled in real time as the route updates automatically. Uber also functions as a marketplace. Prices shift based on supply and demand. When the system detects a high concentration of ride requests near airports during rush hours or when it rains, surge pricing activates to encourage more drivers onto the road. Ratings further shape the experience by giving both riders and drivers a way to maintain service quality. Behind the scenes, historical patterns help the system anticipate busy periods before they occur. Everything from weekend nightlife to morning commutes is mapped through data, allowing Uber to prepare its network in advance. What feels like a single tap on your screen is supported by layers of real-time decision-making, mapping, prediction, and coordination, all working together to make on-demand rides appear exactly when you need them. Netflix, online streaming. It's easy to forget how much is happening behind the scenes when a show loads instantly on your screen. Modern streaming platforms like Netflix are built on layers of technology working together so smoothly that the entire system feels invisible. The moment you select a movie or series, Netflix begins delivering the video in tiny data packets instead of one large file. These packets move across the internet in a steady stream, arriving just fast enough to play continuously. This approach allows the app to start instantly, while still adjusting to whatever internet conditions you have. Keeping the video stable requires constant adaptation. If your connection slows for even a moment, Netflix automatically shifts to a lower resolution to avoid buffering. When the connection improves, the stream upgrades again. These changes happen in real time without interrupting playback. Finding something to watch is also highly engineered. Behind every row of thumbnails is a set of recommendation models analyzing your viewing history, your watch habits, and similarities with millions of other viewers. The result is a personalized menu that shifts and updates as your tastes change. To keep streaming fast worldwide, Netflix places copies of its most watched titles in servers built inside internet provider networks. This reduces the distance data has to travel, which is why blockbuster releases often load instantly even during peak hours. What looks like a simple tap-and-watch experience is actually a huge coordinated system of global servers, predictive algorithms, and adaptive delivery, all designed to make streaming feel effortless every time you press play. Spotify, music streaming. It's surprisingly easy to forget that streaming a song isn't the same as downloading one. The moment you hit play on Spotify, an entire system wakes up behind the scenes to deliver audio almost instantly, even though the music isn't stored on your device. Instead of sending the whole track at once, Spotify divides each song into tiny packets of data. These packets travel through the internet and arrive in a steady flow so the playback stays continuous. If your connection fluctuates, Spotify adjusts the audio quality instantly, lowering it just enough to prevent interruptions and raising it again when the signal improves. Handling a global music library requires more than fast delivery. Spotify stores millions of songs across servers spread around the world, and the system automatically picks the server closest to you to reduce delay. When a track becomes especially popular, it gets replicated across multiple locations so large surges of listeners don't slow anything down. But playback is only half the story. Spotify also tries to understand what you enjoy. Every choice you make, a repeat, a skip, a sudden switch in genre, becomes part of a pattern. Algorithms compare your habits with countless listening profiles to build playlists tailored to your mood and taste. This is why daily mixes, Discover Weekly, and similar features often feel surprisingly accurate. The platform even studies the songs themselves. It analyzes rhythm, loudness, mood, and structure to understand the qualities that make you gravitate towards certain tracks. Combined with your personal data, this helps Spotify shape recommendations that feel intuitive rather than random. All these systems, data streaming, distributed servers, preference learning, and musical analysis, work together quietly so that a single tap can deliver exactly the right song at exactly the right moment. TikTok content streaming. You might open the app intending to watch just one video, and before you know it, the feed has already adjusted to what you're in the mood for. That effortless, continuous flow is the result of a system working far harder than it appears. Rather than sending full videos all at once, TikTok streams them in tiny slices of data. Your phone receives just the amount needed to keep playback running smoothly while the next slices download in the background. This is why even rapid scrolling feels instant. To minimize delay, the app routes each request to the closest server available, shrinking the distance your data has to travel. The real engine of TikTok, however, is the recommendation system. Every interaction, a swipe, a brief pause, a rewatch, even the speed of your scrolling, becomes a clue. Instead of relying on stated preferences, the platform studies actual behavior. If you linger just a moment longer on a certain style of video, the system takes it as a meaningful signal. It then compares your patterns with millions of others, looking for similarities. If people with matching habits enjoy certain types of videos, the system experiments by showing them to you as well. Your feed is constantly recalculated, shifting the moment your interests drift in a new direction. TikTok also evaluates the videos themselves. It reads visual elements, background audio, text overlays, topics, and categories to understand what each clip represents. This allows the system to match not just user preferences, but content characteristics with remarkable precision. Together, these layers, adaptive streaming, distributed servers, behavioral learning, and deep content analysis, create a feed that seems to anticipate what you want long before you consciously decide. You tap your phone at a store counter and the payment completes almost instantly. Behind that simple gesture is a digital wallet, a system that turns your payment details into secure, encrypted data. A digital wallet holds your card information the way a physical wallet holds plastic cards. But instead of storing the actual numbers, your phone keeps everything encrypted and hidden. When you make a payment, it never sends your real card number. Instead, it generates a one-time code called a token. This token can't be reused, copied, or traced back to your card, which makes the process far safer than swiping a physical card. The moment you tap, your phone communicates with the payment terminal using NFC, a short-range wireless technology that allows devices to exchange data when they're just a few centimeters apart. The terminal receives the token and sends it through the payment network. On the back end, the network matches that token with your real account details, tucked safely behind multiple layers of security. If everything looks correct, your bank approves the transaction within milliseconds. Digital wallets also verify that you're the one making the payment. Face recognition, fingerprint scans, or a passcode confirm your identity without sending your biometric data to the store or the bank. Your phone simply tells the system that the check passed. Because it's digital, the wallet can carry more than just credit cards. Transit passes, tickets, loyalty cards, and even virtual IDs can all live inside the same secure container. What feels like a quick tap is actually a sequence of encryption, token creation, device authentication, and secure communication, all happening quietly in the background, so paying with your phone feels instant and safe. Steam, software market. Opening your computer and launching a game through Steam feels simple, but behind that single click is one of the most complex digital distribution systems ever built. Steam functions as a central marketplace where developers upload their games, updates, and tools, and where users can download them instantly. At its core, Steam is a delivery system, a massive network that stores enormous amounts of data and distributes it reliably to millions of players around the world. When you purchase a game, Steam doesn't send one big file. Instead, the game is divided into many compressed chunks spread across servers in different regions. Steam automatically connects you to the nearest server with the best speed, delivering the data in parallel streams. This is why even huge titles download more smoothly than you'd expect. Every time you open a game, Steam handles authentication quietly in the background. It confirms that the game license belongs to your account, preventing unauthorized access without interrupting your experience. Cloud saves work the same way. When you close a game, Steam syncs your progress to remote servers, so you can pick up right where you left off, even on a different device. Updates are one of Steam's most efficient features. Rather than making you reinstall entire games, Steam compares your files with the latest version and downloads only the pieces that changed. This approach saves time, reduces bandwidth costs, and keeps your library consistently up to date. For developers, Steam offers more than distribution. It provides analytics, pricing tools, community forums, automatic patching, and support systems. Everything needed to run a modern game long after launch. What appears to be a simple game library on your screen is actually a sophisticated worldwide network designed to deliver, update, and safeguard digital content with minimal effort from the user. Online gaming. For many people, online games feel like simple entertainment, but behind every match is a highly coordinated system built to connect players around the world in real time. At the center of multiplayer gaming is the server. Every move you make, whether you're sprinting, firing, jumping, or interacting with the environment, is converted into tiny data packets and sent to that server. At the same time, the server receives thousands of similar packets from all other players in the match. Its job is to process all of this instantly, determine the correct state of the world, and send updated information back to everyone within milliseconds. To keep the game fair, the server is the final authority. Even if players have different internet speeds, the server decides the real position of every character when a hit lands, and how objects behave. If someone's connection lags, the game predicts short-term movements to keep the action looking smooth, then corrects the visuals once the server confirms the true outcome. Large worlds and detailed environments are managed efficiently too. Your device doesn't render everything at once. Instead, it only loads what you can currently see. As you move, the game streams in new areas and removes the old ones, which keeps performance steady and reduces strain on your hardware. Matchmaking systems run quietly in the background, analyzing region, history, and skill level to create balanced lobbies. Anti-cheat systems work alongside them, monitoring files and gameplay patterns to detect unnatural behavior and keep matches fair. What feels like a simple match is actually a rapid exchange of data, real-time prediction, and constant server calculations working together to create the fast, responsive experience of modern online gaming. Uber Eats, online fooding. Ordering food from your phone feels simple, but the system behind that tap involves a long chain of decisions happening almost instantly. When you choose a restaurant, the app sends your order to a central server. That server checks whether the restaurant is open, how busy it is, and whether it can prepare your items in a reasonable time. Once confirmed, the order appears on the restaurant's device, where staff begin preparing it. At the same time, the system searches for a delivery partner. This isn't random. The algorithm looks at nearby drivers, current traffic, estimated cooking time, and past delivery performance. It tries to assign someone who can reach the restaurant just as the food is being finished, reducing waiting time and keeping the order fresh. The driver's app constantly exchanges data with the server. Their location, speed, and route are updated in seconds. This allows your phone to show accurate tracking as they move through the city. The navigation system also calculates the fastest path based on real-time traffic, road closures, and historical patterns. To make payments seamless, the app handles every transaction digitally. It verifies your card, locks in the amount, and holds it securely until the order is delivered. Meanwhile, the restaurant and driver receive their share automatically without you needing to calculate anything. Even ratings are part of the system. Every review feeds back into the algorithm to improve future recommendations and assignments. High-rated restaurants appear more often, and drivers with consistent performance get priority access to orders. What feels like a quick shortcut to dinner is actually a coordinated network of logistics, mapping, communication, and automation built to move food from a kitchen to your door with as little effort from you as possible. WhatsApp, Messenger. Sending a message on your phone looks effortless, but underneath that quick "sent" checkmark is a detailed process that moves information across networks in a fraction of a second. The moment you hit send, your phone turns your text into a small packet of data. This packet contains the message itself, an address telling the system who it's meant for, and routing information that helps guide it. Your phone sends this packet through Wi-Fi or mobile data to the closest available server run by the messaging app. Before that packet even leaves your device, something important happens. It gets encrypted. Modern messaging apps use end-to-end encryption, meaning your phone scrambles the message using a digital key that only the recipient's device can unlock. Not even the company handling the message can read what's inside. Their servers simply pass along unreadable data. Once the encrypted packet reaches the server, the system checks whether the recipient is currently online. If they are, the message is delivered instantly. If they're offline, the server holds the encrypted message safely until their device reconnects. When their phone receives it, the matching key decrypts the message and turns it back into readable text. All the small details around messaging, like typing indicators, delivered checks, or online status, come from tiny background signals your phone sends regularly. These are lightweight notifications that update the system without revealing any message content. Media works the same way, just in bigger pieces. Photos, videos, and voice notes are compressed into smaller packets before being sent, which keeps delivery fast, even when files are large. What feels like a simple back-and-forth chat is actually a secure, high-speed exchange of encrypted data traveling across servers and networks to create instant conversation. Booking platforms. Planning a trip or reserving a table usually feels like a quick digital chore. But the moment you tap book, a chain of systems starts working together behind the scenes. Booking platforms don't store every flight, hotel room, or restaurant slot themselves. Instead, they act like intermediaries, connecting directly to the live databases of airlines, hotels, or service providers. Each provider updates its availability and prices constantly. When you search, the platform sends a real-time request and receives the latest results back within seconds. That's why a seat or room can vanish right before you confirm. Someone else's request reached the system first. Once you select an option, the platform creates a temporary reservation known as an inventory hold. This hold protects your seat or room for a short time while you enter details and complete payment. If too much time passes, the hold expires and your selection returns to the pool for others to book. Payment flows through a secure gateway that encrypts your card information and checks with your bank for approval. Only when the bank confirms the transaction does the booking system finalize the reservation. At this point, a unique booking ID is generated. The reference number hotels, airlines, and restaurants rely on to identify, modify, or verify your reservation instantly. In the background, these platforms also manage cancellation rules, date changes, loyalty points, and notifications. Reminders, check-in alerts, and schedule updates are all triggered automatically through the data linked to your reservation. What feels like a simple confirmation screen is really a coordinated exchange between live inventories, payment systems, and identity checks, all synchronized to secure your plans within moments. Belief formation. It's surprising how much of what we know isn't something we consciously chose. It's something that formed quietly in the background of everyday life. Beliefs grow out of exposure. The brain is always taking in signals, what people say, what you read, what you observe, and what your environment rewards or discourages. Instead of evaluating each piece of information from scratch, the mind builds shortcuts. It notices patterns and uses them to decide quickly what feels true or trustworthy. This makes life easier to navigate, but it also means early impressions can linger far longer than we expect. Memory adds another layer. The brain doesn't store moments like a camera. It saves highlights, emotions, and simplified versions of events. These become the mental references we rely on. When new information matches what we already believe, the brain tends to strengthen that connection. When it doesn't, the mind often minimizes or questions it. This isn't stubbornness. It's the brain trying to maintain a stable sense of reality. Beliefs also form socially. We absorb ideas from the people around us, family, peers, communities, often without realizing it. Shared viewpoints create a sense of safety and belonging, making them feel more convincing. Online spaces amplify this. Algorithms naturally show you more of what you interact with, creating loops that reinforce your existing perspectives. Beliefs can shift, but usually through steady exposure to new ideas or a powerful emotional event that forces old patterns to be reconsidered. These changes rarely feel sudden. They unfold quietly over time. Belief formation is not a single decision, but an ongoing process, a blend of memory, influence, and interpretation that helps the mind create meaning out of the world it experiences. Social conditioning. Many of the habits you follow every day weren't chosen consciously. They're patterns absorbed from your surroundings over years of repetition. This quiet shaping process is what we call social conditioning. It begins early in life. Children watch how adults speak, behave, and respond to situations, and the brain stores these patterns as the default way to act. Approval and disapproval play a huge role. When certain behaviors consistently lead to praise or acceptance, they're reinforced. When others lead to discomfort or correction, the mind learns to avoid them. Nothing dramatic happens in these moments, but slowly, they form the foundation of what feels normal. As life expands beyond home, new layers of conditioning appear. Schools encourage specific behaviors like sitting still, cooperating, and following schedules. Workplaces add their own expectations: professionalism, punctuality, communication styles. Even everyday routines such as queuing, holding doors, or lowering your voice in certain places are the result of repeated cues rather than explicit instruction. Culture shapes this further. Traditions, community norms, and unspoken rules guide how people express emotions, measure success, dress, or communicate. When the same ideas appear in family life, media, and social circles, they begin to feel instinctive. You don't question them because you've seen them so often that they blend into the background of life. Social groups reinforce these patterns too. Humans naturally adjust their behavior to stay connected to others. We mirror attitudes, adopt shared habits, and internalize expectations because fitting in feels stable and familiar. Most of this happens subtly, without any conscious effort. Social conditioning isn't a rigid set of instructions. It's the quiet accumulation of repeated experiences that shapes how you react, what you value, and how you navigate everyday situations, often without realizing where those tendencies originally came from. Moral reasoning. Some decisions in daily life feel effortless, but behind them is a mental process that quietly evaluates what's right, what's wrong, and why certain choices matter. This process is what we rely on for moral reasoning, even if we rarely think about it. The earliest layer forms in childhood, when simple lessons link actions to consequences. A child might avoid hurting someone because they understand that pain has personal meaning. These early rules are basic, but they set the stage for everything that follows. Lessons about fairness, sharing, honesty, and responsibility. As we grow, the process shifts from following rules to evaluating situations. Choices become less black and white. Helping someone, even when inconvenient, feels right because it strengthens trust. Telling the truth in a difficult moment feels necessary because it aligns with our values, even if it leads to discomfort. These decisions involve comparing intentions, predicting outcomes, and noticing how actions influence relationships. No two people reason the same way. Culture, family, personality, and experience shape what feels moral. Some people prioritize loyalty, others prioritize fairness, and others lead with empathy. A structured upbringing might create a strong rule-based approach, while unpredictable experiences might build a more flexible, situational style. Sometimes values collide: honesty versus kindness, fairness versus loyalty, personal comfort versus responsibility. In these moments, the mind pulls from memory, social norms, and internal principles to find the most balanced response. There's rarely a perfect answer, only the choice that best fits what someone believes is right. Moral reasoning is the quiet guide behind everyday decisions, helping us maintain trust, cooperation, and understanding in the relationships and communities we move through. Identity formation. A lot of what feels like your true self didn't appear all at once. It's built slowly, shaped by the situations you move through and the choices you make, even when you aren't consciously trying to define who you are. The earliest layers form through observation. As a child, you watch how people interact, how they speak, respond, celebrate, or argue. These patterns become your first reference points. Without realizing it, you begin absorbing ideas about what is normal, what is valued, and how you're expected to behave. As life expands, you start discovering personal preferences. Certain activities feel natural, others feel draining. Some subjects spark curiosity, while others barely hold your attention. These repeated interests become clues about who you are, and over time, they turn into parts of your identity. The hobbies, abilities, or tendencies you consistently return to. Social environments add another layer. Friends, teachers, colleagues, and communities give constant feedback. Encouragement strengthens certain traits. Criticism or exclusion pushes you towards different paths. Even subtle reactions, a smile, a nod, a shared joke, influence how you think about yourself. Experiences shape identity too. Moments of success boost confidence. Failures teach resilience or shift your expectations. Challenges force growth. Each event leaves a mark, refining the story you tell about what kind of person you are and what you believe you can handle. Identity formation isn't something you finish. It's a continuous process where your environment, choices, and reflections overlap. Through everyday actions and long-term changes, you slowly build the internal narrative that defines how you see yourself and how you move through the world. Attachment styles. A lot of what feels like your true self didn't appear all at once. It's built slowly, shaped by the situations you move through and the choices you make, even when you aren't consciously trying to define who you are. The earliest layers form through observation. As a child, you watch how people interact, how they speak, respond, celebrate, or argue. These patterns become your first reference points. Without realizing it, you begin absorbing ideas about what is normal, what is valued, and how you're expected to behave. As life expands, you start discovering personal preferences. Certain activities feel natural, others feel draining. Some subjects spark curiosity, while others barely hold your attention. These repeated interests become clues about who you are, and over time, they turn into parts of your identity. The hobbies, abilities, or tendencies you consistently return to. Social environments add another layer. Friends, teachers, colleagues, and communities give constant feedback. Encouragement strengthens certain traits. Criticism or exclusion pushes you toward different paths. Even subtle reactions, a smile, a nod, a shared joke, influence how you think about yourself. Experiences shape identity too. Moments of success boost confidence. Failures teach resilience or shift your expectations. Challenges force growth. Each event leaves a mark, refining the story you tell about what kind of person you are and what you believe you can handle. Identity formation isn't something you finish. It's a continuous process where your environment, choices, and reflections overlap. Through everyday actions and long-term changes, you slowly build the internal narrative that defines how you see yourself and how you move through the world.